It happened a few weeks ago, earlier this month, here at our cottage. Just a standard, typical night for us.
It's a cosy night.
The removal of titles is not a negotiation, it is a royal order. Official statement from the House of Windsor. Issued at 8 a.m. Friday, the 5th of December 2025. In a move that stunned even seasoned royal observers, Buckingham Palace issued a rare and sharply worded declaration confirming that the final and irrevocable removal of Meghan Markle's remaining royal titles was not subject to discussion, diplomacy, or personal petition. The statement came less than 24 hours after Meghan Markle appeared in a pre-recorded message from Santa Barbara, framed as a moment of personal accountability. In the emotional clip published on her personal media platform, Archewell Journal, Meghan spoke with surprising calm, conceding past errors of judgment in how she had leveraged her royal status in media and brand deals. She went further, stating, "I accept the decisions made by the monarchy. I will no longer use any royal title or association in public engagements or commercial work. My only hope is that my children, who are of royal blood, are not denied their connection to heritage." On the surface, it looked like a rare act of concession, but behind palace walls, it landed quite differently. According to multiple insiders speaking in background, the palace viewed Meghan's apology video as a strategic maneuver, a preemptive public relations move designed to frame the royal family's final decisions as an agreement rather than a directive. And so, in an unusually fast turnaround, the palace responded with a published directive signed off by King Charles III and formally communicated by the Lord Chamberlain's office, making clear the gravity of the moment. The withdrawal of titles, privileges, and heraldic rights from the Duchess of Sussex is a matter of royal institutional judgment, not personal negotiation. The Crown exercises its authority with solemnity, not bargaining. Unquote. What many outside the UK forget is that royal titles are not personal property, nor even honorary awards. They are sovereign designations granted under letters patent, a legal instrument of the monarch. In Meghan's case, the last remaining claims to Duchess of Sussex and Countess of Dumbarton were subject to a closed review session of the Privy Council held on the 30th of November 2025. The outcome had already been decided before Meghan's video, with a sealed document signed by King Charles on December 2, officially revoking her usage of any titles conferred by the Crown post-marriage. Sources close to Princess Anne, who played a pivotal role in the internal title review committee, say the monarchy had grown increasingly concerned with Meghan's attempt to steer narrative control by choosing to relinquish a title after it had already been taken away. "It's not about punishment," said a palace aide close to Anne. "It's about clarity. You cannot turn a legal revocation into a sympathetic exit speech. That creates confusion and undermines the monarchy's institutional role." While Meghan may have relinquished her titles, she did not remain silent on the future of her children Archie and Lilibet Diana. "While I respect all decisions regarding me personally," she said, "I hope that Archie and Lilibet are given the freedom to explore and maintain their royal roots as they grow. That's not about power, it's about identity." But to insiders, this was not merely a maternal plea, it was a carefully worded preservation strategy. According to UK constitutional analysts, children born of a prince remain in the line of succession, regardless of their parents' status, unless Parliament formally removes them. This gives Archie and Lilibet technical proximity to the throne, but more importantly, access to specific legacy trusts, including the Sandringham Heritage Trust, the Windsor Royal Lineal Fund, Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Reserve, which, though discretionary, typically benefits lineal descendants who retain positive standing with the monarchy. By reaffirming her children's connection to the royal family, Meghan may be attempting to secure future inheritance eligibility, even as she herself steps away. The firmest pushback, however, came not from Charles or Anne, but from Prince William, now increasingly seen as the operational head of the monarchy's next generation. "No child of this family will be denied love, protection, or heritage," he said in a surprise doorstep appearance at Kensington Palace, late evening, December 5. But that protection cannot be traded for press appearances or twisted into PR narratives. Blood does not equal entitlement. That is a lesson we are committed to uphold for all our children. Sources say William was particularly disturbed by Meghan's attempt to position the title loss as a shared understanding. To him, it was a final line in the sand, the closing of a chapter that had long eroded public trust in the family. Princess Anne, never one to mince words, took the final tone sharper still. In a rare written statement published in The Times on the morning of December 6, she clarified that royal guardianship decisions around minors remain separate from title inheritance. The House of Windsor has no interest in litigating the parentage or custody of children. However, legal titles, privileges, and obligations are the responsibility of the Crown. That is not subject to maternal veto. It's ban. She ended with a quiet but definitive sentence. If Meghan believes she gave something up, let the record show it had already been taken. I am not a bargaining chip between past and future. I am a father first. Prince Harry, informal statement to a family confidant, the 6th of December 2025. For perhaps the first time in over 3 years, Prince Harry now finds himself caught not between two institutions, but between two opposing worldviews under the same roof. Meghan Markle's abrupt move, renouncing all personal claims to royal titles while affirming her children's royal entitlements, has created a fracture line within their own household. According to insiders close to the Sussex camp in Montecito, Harry was neither consulted on the exact wording nor prepared for the backlash. The official palace response delivered swiftly and with unmistakable finality only made things more complex. It left no room for reinterpretation. Titles are not tools of negotiation, they are sovereign designations, and any association with them beyond royal will is now considered a breach of constitutional order. Sources inside Clarence House confirm that a private call took place between King Charles III and Prince Harry on the evening of December 5, lasting just under 12 minutes. While no official transcript exists, 2 senior aides report that the King's tone was measured but unyielding. Oppressed. Charles reiterated what was made public. Meghan's statement, while emotionally phrased, did not affect any legal decision previously made. The revocation of her titles had already passed through royal protocol and bore the seal of the sovereign. There would be no reversal, no room for future reinstatement. Harry reportedly listened in silence for most of the call, but as the topic turned to Archie and Lilibet's long-term relationship with the Crown, the tone grew more complicated. He asked what protection would mean in practical terms, said a palace aide, familiar with the briefing. But the king reminded him, protection does not mean preference. Meanwhile, Prince William's tone was notably firmer. In a follow-up briefing with close advisers at Kensington Palace, he made clear that any narrative suggesting the monarchy would offer selective treatment for Archie and Lilibet based on public pressure would not be tolerated. This marked a turning point in William's leadership, the clear message being that legacy cannot be cherry-picked and status is tied to service, not sentiment. Either you're within the framework of royal responsibility or you're not, William reportedly said. And if you're not, then titles, access, and legacy must align accordingly. His words echoed across press rooms and political offices alike, drawing comparisons to the Queen's famous 1992 annus horribilis tone of containment. Amid the emotional language and family divides, a more structural concern is quietly driving the storm: inheritance law. Constitutional experts point out that children in the royal line of succession are eligible for multiple trust funds and privileges, but these often come with clauses: positive engagement with the Crown, parental alignment with royal duty, non-commercial use of royal symbols. By formally separating herself while clinging to her children's royal identity, Meghan may be attempting to retain access to long-term inheritance potential, particularly in relation to the Windsor Lineal Reserve and Queen Elizabeth II's Trust for Commonwealth Heirs. In short, she's accepting the loss of personal status, but positioning her children as rightful heirs, potentially opening a legal grey zone if their guardianship remains outside the monarchy's reach. Princess Anne, once again, refused to let ambiguity flourish. Speaking through an op-ed released by The Telegraph on the morning of December 6, she set the record straight. No child is being taken, claimed, or absorbed by the Crown. What is being withdrawn is the use of a brand that carries weight, security implications, diplomatic meaning, and historical significance. And such a brand cannot be wielded outside the realm of duty. Free. She further cited the precedent of Lady Louise Windsor and James, Earl of Wessex, the children of Prince Edward and Sophie, who grew up in public schools without titles or expectations, and only later chose whether to assume duties. Anne concluded with icy precision. If they, Archie and Lilibet, wish to one day serve, they will be welcomed, but they will not be traded like assets in the meantime. The removal of a title is not a conversation, it is a matter of record. Royal Legal Advisory Council. Briefing note. The 30th of November 2025. The revocation of royal titles is not merely symbolic. In the British constitutional monarchy, such a move carries the weight of history, parliament, and legal precision, and on November 30, that weight became inescapable. At precisely 9:42 a.m. GMT, the Royal Communications Office uploaded a sealed order in council formally declaring the following: Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, shall no longer hold or be referred to by any noble title granted by royal prerogative, effective immediately. All rights to represent the Crown or associate with its symbols, including use of family crests, stylized monograms, or the Duchess label in public or commercial materials, were terminated. The order included a clarification clause for her children, stating that Archie and Lilibet remain in the line of succession, but will not inherit styling or status unless conferred in the future by a direct act of the reigning monarch. This wasn't just policy, it was constitutional recalibration. But within 72 hours, Meghan Markle launched a calibrated campaign to reclaim narrative control, appearing not on talk shows but in a quiet, heart-centered interview with Aria Jameson, an independent American journalist with deep ties to women's advocacy platforms. Filmed discreetly in California and released on December 3, the interview avoided scandal and optics. Instead, Meghan wore a neutral cashmere sweater, no makeup, no jewelry. The tone was stripped of glamour and entirely focused on motherhood. "I am not clinging to any title," Meghan said softly. "I've let it go because my children's peace matters more." She admitted for the first time that using the Duchess brand in early projects had been misguided, and that she underestimated the responsibility that came with it. But just as quickly, she shifted the lens. "My hope is not for privilege," she continued, "it's for protection. For Archie and Lilibet to know that they belong, that they are not forgotten just because we live further away." The interview immediately went viral. Within 36 hours, the clip had over 18 million views across YouTube and Instagram. Mother Before Monarch trended in the US and Canada. Several celebrity figures, including Viola Davis and Kerry Washington, posted supportive messages. It was, according to media analysts, a masterclass in emotional positioning, casting Meghan not as the rebellious Duchess, but as the protective outsider mother. Yet behind the tone, legal scholars noticed a very specific legal angle emerging. Meghan's language about the children belonging and not being forgotten seemed to hint at Article 7.3 of the Crown Legacy Allocation Act, 2002, amendment. This obscure clause governs beneficiary eligibility for the Royal Lineal Reserves, a multi-billion-pound trust that includes property shares, artworks, and liquid capital from Queen Elizabeth II's personal holdings. The catch? Children must remain in active, good standing with the Crown, which has historically been interpreted to include No estrangement beyond 5 years. Visible participation in Crown-led educational or cultural programs. No parent engaged in active defamation or violation of royal policy. This is where Meghan's pivot becomes strategic. By embracing royal norms publicly, distancing herself from previous friction, and positioning herself in support of the monarchy's relationship with her children, she may be setting the legal foundation for Archie and Lilibet's inclusion in these long-term inheritance structures. A royal insider put it bluntly, she doesn't want to go back in, she wants the future secured, she's looking at 20 years from now. In the midst of all this, King Charles III is walking a diplomatic tightrope, with his own health concerns becoming increasingly visible, most recently at the Remembrance Sunday ceremony on November 10. Where he appeared visibly fatigued, Charles is determined to unify the core family before what some insiders are calling the year of recalibration in 2026. To that end, he has authorized a special oversight unit within the royal household known as the Succession Integrity Office. Its task? Ensure no misuse of titles or lineage references in future media. Monitor the relationship between external households, such as the Sussexes, and minor heirs. Define long-term education and security provisions for royal minors outside the UK. We're not closing doors, a royal aide clarified. We're closing loopholes. For Harry, the emotional toll is visible. He's neither leading Meghan's new maternal campaign nor defending the palace's position. In fact, he's doing something uncharacteristic, staying silent. Sources confirm that he has cancelled 2 public appearances in late December, and a planned podcast relaunch with Spotify's alternative media brand, Vera, has been postponed indefinitely. A former military friend described him as adrift. He thought the war was between families, the friend said. But it's now between eras, and he's somewhere in the middle, unsure where his loyalty even fits. The Crown does not negotiate its dignity, least of all with those who have chosen to walk away. It's Devonshire Boshin, HRH Princess Anne, to the Privy Council, the 1st of December 2025. If King Charles is the monarch who seeks unity, and Prince William is the future anchor of royal continuity, Princess Anne is the blade, sharp, deliberate, and unyielding in defense of the Crown's moral and legal clarity. On the morning of December 1, Anne led a closed-door session of the Royal Legal Protection Board, alongside advisors from the Home Office, MI5 liaison officers, and 3 senior representatives of the Privy Council. The session, convened at St. James's Palace, focused on the implications of Meghan Markle's latest media statements regarding her children's connection to the monarchy and her thinly veiled assertion that they should retain full access to royal privilege without engagement in royal responsibility. Anne's tone was reportedly measured but firm, cutting through the layers of emotional press coverage and celebrity deflection. She began by referencing a 1987 ruling regarding the children of Prince Edward and Sophie Rhys-Jones, now the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. At the time, Queen Elizabeth II made the deliberate choice not to style Lady Louise and James as Her Royal Highness, allowing them to live as private citizens unless they chose royal duties upon adulthood. They went to normal schools, played on normal fields, no security convoys, no royal interference, Anne reminded the council. She then turned toward the core of the current debate: Archie and Lilibet's future visibility, legal guardianship, and inheritance entitlements. Anne's declaration, formally entered into royal record on December 1, stated, "Until the age of 18, any minor child with royal lineage remains under the legal guardianship of their parents, but cannot engage with or be engaged by the monarchy without Crown consent. No titles or styling past or pending guarantee inheritance rights or state-based security provision." The revocation of titles from Meghan Markle was a Crown Act, not a private exchange or a negotiated agreement. "This is not a custody battle," Anne clarified. "This is about the clarity of legacy. No one markets the Crown's symbols without consequence." Her statement sent ripples through constitutional scholars, royal correspondents, and diplomatic circles alike. For the first time, the palace drew a line in public. Royal status is earned through service, not birth alone. Though Meghan had earlier framed her acceptance of the title revocation as gracious and motherly, her statements also cleverly implied a maternal right to negotiate access to the monarchy for her children. She pointed to Prince Louis, the youngest son of William and Catherine, as a precedent. If Louis isn't fulfilling duties yet, why expect anything from Archie or Lilibet, she said. But Anne dismantled that argument in her December 2 counter-briefing. She noted that Prince Louis, though not currently active in duties, is being raised within the core royal household, with direct exposure to protocol, national institutions, and heritage service. Meghan's children, while not being penalised, are simply not integrated into Crown functions, and thus have no institutional standing to claim rights or protections reserved for active lineal heirs. A senior aide close to Anne summarised the situation. Meghan wants sovereignty over the children's symbolic proximity to the Crown without obligation. But proximity is not a right, it is a burden, one this family does not place lightly. Thank you for watching. To prevent future confusion, Anne pushed forward the final formalisation of Royal Memo 47A, signed jointly by King Charles and Prince William on the 4th of December 2025. The memo reiterates, no reinstatement or protection of styles, titles, or privileges can occur without formal act by the sovereign or a 2/3 Privy Council vote. No private agreement or media negotiation can influence royal line policy, guardianship structures, or visibility rights for minors under Crown record. Public appearances, documentaries, children's books, and charity campaigns involving royal minors must be approved in advance, else risk legal and financial penalties under the Royal Commercial Misuse Act, 2013. This memo, although not unprecedented, marks the first time it has been invoked for non-residing royal minors living overseas. Charles, while reluctant to escalate family tensions, approved the memo without edits, reportedly saying, "This is not about severing ties, it's about preserving truth." Prince William's tone has grown more austere. At a charity dinner for bereaved veterans on December 5, he made an unscripted comment that drew headlines. "My children will serve their nation. So will my brothers, if they choose to walk with honour. But no one markets the crown without consequence." Sources close to William say he has stopped all informal communication with Meghan entirely, speaking only to Harry via encrypted channels managed by legal counsel. As for Harry, insiders at Frogmore Hall in Windsor, still a royal property technically leased to Harry through early 2026, report he has not returned to the UK and is delaying confirmation for any Christmas appearance at Sandringham. The days following Princess Anne's formal briefing and the publication of Royal Memo 47A triggered a seismic shift not just within the walls of Buckingham Palace, but across media outlets, legal think tanks, and even Parliament. What started as a symbolic clarification about the status of Archie and Lilibet has evolved into a constitutional conversation about legacy, precedent, and the risks of celebrity power to royal sovereignty. In the early hours of December 3, Meghan Markle released a professionally filmed message from her Montecito residence. Dressed simply in cream cashmere, flanked by a modest family portrait and children's drawings, she read from a printed letter. "I understand now the implications of my previous actions, and I fully accept the decision of the Crown. I will not use my title in any personal, commercial, or media-related activities. I only ask that my children be allowed a bond spiritual, not ceremonial, with the family of their birth." The video amassed 12 million views within 36 hours. Critics called it emotional PR. Supporters hailed it as graceful, but analysts weren't convinced by its surface tone. Veteran royal correspondent Nigel Harrison described it as a preemptive move to avoid legal blowback while strategically retaining long-term access to royal legacy through emotional capital. "It's not report, Indeed, legal advisors to the Crown have warned of sympathy laundering, a public relations tactic designed to recast accountability into victimhood, particularly when inheritance, trust access, or protection privileges are at stake. According to letters patent of 1917 and revised provisions under the 2012 Succession to the Crown Act, only those who maintain a recognised royal standing by name, duty, or documented lineage can be entitled to certain state-held properties and legacy assets. However, two royal trusts remain legally ambiguous. The Queen Elizabeth II Youth Legacy Fund, established in 2022 for all descendants of sovereign service. The Balmoral Reserve Titles Pool, which includes symbolic holdings like estate shares, historical jewellery, and intellectual properties, for example, photo rights, ceremonial crests. According to investigative journalist Clara Renford, Meghan's statement appeared ***, less focused on titles, more subtly angled at preserving her children's future eligibility for these legacy trusts. By making herself the cooperative parent, Renford says, she repositions the Crown as the aggressor if it blocks her children. This isn't maternal, it's masterful. Aixleen Durs coming. On December 4, Princess Anne issued a second clarification via the Royal Press Office, quoting archival precedent from King George VI, who wrote, "No child shall bear the burden of pageantry unless prepared to shoulder its discipline." Anne affirmed that Archie and Lilibet would not be excluded from legacy trust considerations, only held to the same conditional structure applied to other royal minors. This includes no access before age 18, confirmation of public service engagement, proof of UK-based education or residency for legacy inclusion reviews, absolute compliance with media use restrictions involving the Crown's name or imagery. Anne's closing words were particularly stark. "Inheritance is not a birthright, it is a burden, and no burden shall be handed to those who market it as a brand." Prince William, while deliberately measured in recent weeks, has become the quiet enforcer of royal institutional coherence. Sources confirm that William has personally instructed legal teams to begin reviewing usage of the Cambridge coat of arms across several digital platforms, including ones formerly affiliated with Meghan and Harry's Archewell Foundation. The move suggests future litigation if royal symbols continue to be used in documentaries or publications not sanctioned by the palace. Meanwhile, William's latest appearance at the Royal Civic Trust Summit on December 5 included a deliberate omission, no mention of his brother. "He is letting policy, not emotion, speak for him," noted political editor Vanessa Crail. "It's the most devastating silence imaginable." In Westminster, an informal cross-party group of MPs, led by Sir Malcolm Davies, Conservative, and Angela Toth, Labour, have begun circulating a non-binding motion proposing a succession integrity review. The motion, while not directly targeting Harry or his children, seeks to define limitations on royal descendants raised outside the UK, establish a parliamentary review body to audit Crown symbols in media, clarify the inheritance eligibility of minors not engaged in Crown duties. While Prime Minister Marcus Ainsley has not endorsed the motion, palace insiders say Charles supports such an initiative privately, viewing it as a chance to formalise protections against future reputation damage. "The monarchy is not a reality show," said MP Toth in a Commons hallway interview. "And it's time the law reflected that." As Buckingham Palace's December chill settled over the lawns of Windsor, the final contours of this crisis began to harden, not just in law, but in sentiment. The royal family's tone had changed, not sharp, not cruel, but impossibly clear. No more negotiation, no more ambiguity, and perhaps most crucially, no more exception for those who chose celebrity over service. One of the most conspicuous absences in the days following the royal announcement has been Prince Harry himself. Insiders confirm he has neither commented publicly nor issued a private appeal to Buckingham Palace since December 2, when the final formalities of the title revocation were published in the London Gazette. A source close to Kensington describes him as disoriented, but not surprised. Harry knew this was coming. There had been warnings, meetings, letters. The Crown gave every opportunity for dignified disengagement. But Meghan made it tactical. He made it personal. And now he's stuck between a wife's strategy and a father's legacy. According to former palace aide Sir Jonathan Markham, Harry has consulted legal advisors privately regarding Archie's and Lilibet's right to use family names in their educational documents and travel records. The request has not been formally submitted, a sign that even he is unsure of the battle ahead. In a rare leak, a handwritten memo from King Charles III to Princess Catherine, dated December 4, embossed with the Windsor seal, was revealed in a discreet Daily Times column. The note, though brief, was intensely personal. "Let this moment be the last we bend. You have carried our name with dignity amid storms designed to break it. From this winter forward, let the world see what our house stands for." It was. The letter, insiders say, was written following a private father-son call between Charles and William, their first direct one-on-one in 3 weeks. The topic: how to repair the House of Windsor's moral centre without turning its gates into fortress walls. On December 25, King Charles is set to deliver what aides describe as the most values-driven speech of his reign. While the final script remains under wraps, early drafts suggest that for the first time in over 2 decades, the speech will include a section about the cost of public betrayal and the burden of legacy, without honour. It is expected that Charles will praise Princess Anne's institutional courage, highlight Catherine's quiet leadership, especially in charity and public diplomacy, issue a generalized but pointed message about misuse of titles and selling stories over sacrifice. The address will be broadcast from St George's Hall in Windsor Castle, a symbolic return to Elizabeth II's most favoured space for family diplomacy and royal resolve. One aide reportedly said, "He won't mention names, but everyone will know." While no official document bears the name, internal sources confirm that the palace has finalized the Windsor Reset Doctrine, the term used by senior courtiers to describe the post-Meghan era of operational protocol. Key provisions include: all royal descendants must reside in the UK by age 15 to maintain any symbolic title. No family member may license, replicate, or suggest royal authority in media without pre-clearance from the Royal Communications Office. A Royal Symbol Protection Act currently in legal drafting phase will criminalise unauthorised use of royal seals, insignias, or family name in any monetised platform or publication. The new doctrine will also revise mentorship for heirs, including Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, instilling international legal training and digital media security from age 12, a direct result of lessons learned from the Sussex fallout. You can't just strip titles, you have to rebuild trust, policy, and public respect around what remains, said Lady Marian Pelham, former ethics advisor to the Privy Council. As of December 6, there are no further legal moves from Meghan Markle's team. Her documentary deal with Netflix remains intact, but a scheduled late December podcast release, rumoured to include personal reflections on the royal rift, has been indefinitely postponed. According to tech industry watchdog Content Whale, several streaming partners are reassessing the use of former royal branding in promotional material. One media executive noted, "Now that the palace is taking a legal stance, platforms are reviewing what royal adjacent actually means and whether it opens them up to trouble." In short, Meghan's next move may not be on camera, it may be in silence. From the outside, it may appear that titles were revoked, press statements issued, and a few frosty emails sent, but those paying attention know that something far deeper has occurred. This was the Crown redefining itself. Quietly, resolutely, and without apology. Meghan may have believed she was negotiating from a place of strength, that by invoking the role of mother, storyteller, and modern icon, she could shape the battlefield. But in choosing to answer a royal doctrine with Hollywood strategy, she misread the soil beneath the throne. The monarchy didn't counterattack, it clarified, and it did so not with emotion, but with centuries of precedent, power, and patience. Let it be absolutely clear. There will be no return. Not now, not ever. Prince William, in an official statement from Kensington Palace, the 6th of December, 2025. The House of Windsor has spoken, and its message is unflinching. In a historic and uncharacteristically blunt royal statement released on the 6th of December 2025, Prince William, the Prince of Wales, issued a decisive and final verdict on Meghan Markle's future with the royal family. For the first time, the palace not only condemned Meghan's repeated public actions, but also issued a direct warning to major global media outlets, including BBC, CNN, and Sky News, regarding what the royal family calls a pattern of reckless defamation, orchestrated manipulation, and weaponized narrative distortion. It's not choose the 1,148-word statement released by the Office of the Prince of Wales, names Meghan Markle directly, accusing her of launching a calculated campaign to damage the personal and public integrity of Princess Catherine, and of attempting to undermine the moral authority of the monarchy through coordinated misinformation. This is not mere gossip, it is a betrayal of trust, truth, and dignity. The statement continues. The Duchess of Sussex has crossed a threshold from which return is neither welcome nor permissible. The statement arrives after months of escalating tension between Prince William and the Sussex camp. But sources close to the palace say the final straw came on November 29, when a now-debunked documentary segment aired on CNN International alleged that Princess Catherine had silenced Meghan during mental health discussions in 2018 and 2019, a claim directly contradicted by internal royal correspondences, which Kensington has now made available to BBC producers. "We have remained silent long enough," said an insider close to the prince. "Now William is drawing a permanent line in the sand." In the wake of the broadcast, thousands of angry viewers flooded the BBC and CNN with complaints, citing what they called selective editing and one-sided sensationalism. Within 72 hours, Kensington Palace took action. William's statement not only denounced the programme, but also made it known that Royal Legal Counsel has issued formal inquiries into CNN's editorial vetting process and is reviewing legal options for reputational defamation at an international scale. It's Bidnings's route. What stings most deeply for the future king is what royal aides describe as a relentless, vindictive obsession by Meghan with his wife, Princess Catherine, especially during Catherine's recent cancer recovery and return to public life. To weaponize Catherine's illness for sympathy leverage or to cast doubt on her grace is not only morally repugnant, it is dangerous, the statement reads. It further notes that internal investigation revealed private texts from Meghan's former staff leaked to an unnamed American talk show producer, which distorted Catherine's words, framed her as emotionally cold, and misrepresented conversations from early 2020. While the messages were edited to appear legitimate, royal cybersecurity teams tracked inconsistencies and metadata manipulation. One passage from William's statement has already gone viral. "My wife has endured the kind of cruelty no woman, no human should ever face. She will not be your pawn, not for profit, not for press." The ripple effect was immediate. Within hours of the statement, BBC suspended a planned re-airing of its 2021 special, The Crown Unspoken, which heavily relied on anonymous interviews connected to Meghan's circle. Meanwhile, Sky News issued an on-air correction, clarifying that several of the claims aired in a recent panel discussion were based on third-party speculation, not confirmed royal sources. CNN, however, has so far refused to issue a retraction. A spokesperson for CNN International stated on December 7, "We stand by our commitment to journalistic transparency and are open to dialogue with representatives from Kensington Palace. But William's office has taken a harder stance. The prince has refused to take any calls from CNN or its representatives until a full editorial audit is completed. Behind closed doors, palace aides say this may set a new precedent, where the royal family no longer simply rises above the fray, but asserts itself as an institution capable of defending its own narrative. William's words have obliterated any remaining illusion that Meghan Markle might return in any capacity, formal or informal, to royal life. Multiple family members have now echoed this resolve. According to sources, Princess Anne has said privately, "There is no room for traitors in the Crown's circle." King Charles, while softer in tone, is said to have approved William's statement with firm and quiet endorsement. Even Prince Edward, typically seen as a neutral figure, has told aides that the damage is too deep, the consequences too wide. Notably silent in all of this, Prince Harry. Despite receiving a personal copy of William's statement before its release, Harry has yet to issue a public comment. Rumours swirl that he attempted to call Catherine privately calls, which reportedly went unanswered. An insider close to Catherine shared, "She has nothing more to say. Her silence is no longer submission, it is sovereignty." At precisely 8:40 a.m. GMT, on the 2nd of December 2025, an anonymous leak hit Sky News' editorial inbox, an audio file allegedly recorded in early 2020 at Frogmore Cottage. The speaker, Meghan Markle. The target, Catherine, Princess of Wales. In the 41-second clip, Meghan is heard referencing a private moment between her and Catherine, twisting it to sound like a moment of emotional sabotage. What followed in the Sky News studio that day was a wave of speculation, online firestorms, and a special segment entitled, "The Ice Veil." Is Princess Kate truly untouchable? What viewers didn't know until William's December 6 statement was that the clip had been doctored. According to the royal family's cybersecurity consultants, the audio had been spliced, cleaned, and modified using AI-assisted editing software to frame Catherine's words in an unrecognizable tone. "What you heard wasn't true, it was character assassination," stated a palace aide in the background. It was the final betrayal, and William acted within hours. That same day, William summoned his senior communications advisors and legal team to a private emergency meeting at Kensington Palace. By sundown, the draft of the now famous 1,148-word declaration had been completed. According to newly obtained internal documentation reviewed by The Times, a former Archewell staffer submitted a sealed memo to the palace last month, detailing a 5-step strategic narrative rotation. Meghan and her team planned to execute throughout winter 2025 to 2026. The steps included re-engaging American morning talk shows with emotional anecdotes casting her as a misunderstood mother and daughter-in-law, reviving the mental health narrative around her 2019 pregnancy, reintroducing the "Kate Made Me Cry" storyline, this time using partial documents and unnamed senior UK sources. Securing airtime on international outlets like CNN's Amanpour and The Guardian's long-form podcast division. Strategically coordinating reconciliatory rumours to pressure the royal family into a public olive branch. The goal was emotional whiplash, said one palace official. To soften the public with sympathy, then strike with new accusations framed as truths withheld too long. The leak of this memo has since been verified by 2 independent former employees, one of whom has gone on record with The Telegraph. Meghan's legal team declined to comment but warned against ongoing defamation and unsafe leaks. Entitlement. While William's fury was justified, insiders say Catherine remained composed, though visibly hurt. During a quiet engagement on December 4 at St Mary's Children's Hospice, Catherine appeared with a single white lily pinned to her coat, a silent but symbolic gesture of mourning and dignity. She made no comment to the press. A Kensington Palace aide revealed, "She does not wish to enter into this media theatre, but she will not be silent if it endangers the monarchy's values. She supports William completely." In private, however, sources say Catherine has asked to review all future media partnerships associated with the Royal Foundation. This includes a temporary freeze on BBC collaborations until after a joint ethics review is complete. The fallout from William's declaration has rippled across the entire royal family. Princess Anne reportedly phoned William personally, saying, "This is the strength our mother Elizabeth II would have respected. I'm with you." King Charles, currently battling advanced lymphoma, has reduced public appearances but approved the full tone of William's statement in a private meeting held on December 5 at Sandringham. Prince Edward and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, have declined all media requests, signalling unity through silence. One of the strongest moves came from Buckingham Palace Press Office, which issued a rare media blacklist update. Effective immediately, any outlet found amplifying edited or manipulated content targeting active royal members will be removed from future press briefings. CNN's name, though not mentioned, is believed to be at the center of the new policy. If Meghan's plan was to regain public sympathy, the backlash is telling a different story. As of December 7, over 472,000 British citizens have signed a petition calling for media regulation reforms to prevent false royal narratives. Hashtags like #StandWithCatherine, #Meghan exiled, and #William did right have trended for 48 hours straight in the UK and Canada. Meghan's favourability rating in YouGov UK polling has dropped to 14%, its lowest since 2020. Even in the United States, her traditional stronghold media outlets like The Atlantic and Morning Joe have published opinion pieces calling for a pause in the Markle media complex. One headline from The Guardian stands out: "When sympathy becomes strategy, has Meghan lost the plot?" Since William's declaration on the 6th of December 2025, one royal voice has remained notably absent: Prince Harry. Despite the media firestorm, public calls for clarity, and mounting pressure from American and British journalists alike, Harry has issued no statement. No Instagram posts, no official Archewell comment, no podcast mentions. Not even a leak unusual for a couple once famed for strategic media drops. Royal watchers are split. Some believe Harry is privately shattered, caught between loyalty to his wife and the brother who once shared his grief under the gates of Kensington after Diana's death. Others see the silence as complicity, a quiet nod to Meghan's media games, or worse, a calculated strategy to appear blameless. An insider at Kensington Palace was blunt: "There's no such thing as neutral in this. If he doesn't speak, he's protecting her, and if he's protecting her, he's not protecting Catherine." More damning, according to The Times, Harry was personally emailed a confidential reconciliation draft by William in late October 2025. The message, seen by legal intermediaries, proposed a private apology meeting in Windsor with no press access on one condition: Meghan must not attend. Harry never responded. In the wake of the doctored audio clip, royal officials launched Project Marble, a complete audit of digital threats, data access, and physical protection surrounding senior royals, with specific emphasis on William, Catherine, and their children. As of December 7, the following actions have been confirmed. 2 senior cybersecurity officers have been reassigned from the Archewell monitoring unit to the new Counter-Disinformation Task Force. All external mobile devices and cloud-sharing systems used during prior joint ventures, for example Earthshot, Archewell projects, are being resecured or disconnected. Catherine's public schedule is being revised to reduce advance notice to the media, preventing ambush tactics and speculative framing. Perhaps the most significant change, Kensington Palace has severed all private communications with any Archewell-affiliated contractors, pending review by the Royal Legal Office. An MI5 adjacent source confirmed that high-grade surveillance software had traced at least 3 unauthorized metadata pings from a US-based device connected to Archewell's communications team, occurring during Catherine's 2025 visit to Belfast. Though official charges are not being filed yet, the internal suspicion is clear. This is no longer a family matter, it's a national institution being targeted by a rogue PR machine, said a security advisor close to Lord Chamberlain's office. On the evening of December 8, a damning set of internal emails from Archewell's narrative team was published anonymously on the dark web, before being picked up by international whistleblower site Insider Torch. The emails, which span February to November 2025, appear to show Meghan's communications lead drafting content for controlled leak scripts, designed to reframe Catherine's past health battles as weaponized empathy, end quote, float rumors of a rift between Catherine and Queen Camilla, which proved false, solicit anonymous royal sources from freelance gossip columnists in New York, Toronto, and Sydney, undermine William's public trust rating in advance of the 2026 Commonwealth Summit. One chilling email, dated October 13, reads, "We need to take Kate down 2 notches. America's bored with perfection. We need something broken to fix." It was livid. While the author is yet to be confirmed, the email signature matches an address previously linked to Meghan's now former chief of brand strategy. The Royal Legal Office has formally issued a digital forensics demand to Archewell Foundation, requesting device access and internal reviews. California legal sources say Meghan could face defamation claims under UK law, civil suits for reputation damage, further permanent bans from British royal grounds. A former Archewell employee, now under protective NDA, described the internal mood as toxic, desperate, and frantic in the weeks leading up to the leak. Meghan wanted Catherine to break. That was the core strategy. If she cried in public, the sympathy would shift back. But Catherine never cried. She stood, and William responded not with emotion, but with executive precision. As of today, Archewell's main podcast sponsor has suspended all advertising. A petition demanding Meghan be stripped of her Duchess of Sussex title has reached 1.3 million signatures. CNN and BBC both confirmed they are conducting internal reviews of content influenced by Archewell publicists. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace has requested a formal audience with the UK's Ofcom broadcast regulator to discuss long-term press boundaries surrounding royal matters. This is not merely a scandal. It is a constitutional threshold, and Meghan has crossed it. On the 8th of December 2025, just 3 days after William's historic royal statement, Meghan Markle made a surprise appearance in an exclusive sit-down interview with streaming platform Viva Plus. Marketed as her truth moment, the interview was intended to repair her global image. But what aired left even her loyalists stunned. Meghan appeared visibly anxious, reading from notes, and instead of an apology or clarification, she doubled down on her previous accusations. Among the most controversial statements, she described the royal system as a machine designed to erase women who shine too brightly. She insinuated that Catherine's popularity was PR-manufactured perfection built on silence. She claimed that powerful, unseen forces were manipulating William to protect an outdated monarchy. Within hours, the backlash was seismic. Rotten Tomatoes gave the interview a viewer trust rating of just 14%. Hashtag number She Never Apologized trended for 17 hours across the UK, Canada, and Australia. Over 11 sponsors pulled out from the Viva Plus platform. Former Obama advisor Valerie Simons tweeted, "This is no longer about race or feminism. This is about one woman's refusal to be accountable." More damaging, Meghan's facial expressions during Catherine-related segments, smirks, eye rolls, and sarcastic tones sparked viral condemnation, even among moderate viewers. "I used to believe her. Not anymore. You don't speak like that about a cancer survivor." Viewer comment with over 88,000 upvotes on X, formerly Twitter. Behind the scenes, Hollywood is quietly stepping away. According to Deadline, the following major agencies have either paused or terminated representation. WME, William Morris Endeavour, confirmed they are no longer working with Meghan. Sunbird Studios has removed her proposed 2026 wellness docuseries from its development slate. Netflix, still reeling from backlash over Harry and Meghan, Volume 2, has reportedly cancelled all future non-fiction collaborations with Archewell. A producer at a major streaming platform, speaking anonymously, said, "You can't sell betrayal as entertainment forever. At some point, it becomes reputation suicide." Meghan's previous network of celebrity defenders, Oprah, Ellen DeGeneres, Serena Williams, have remained publicly silent despite outreach. In fact, several Hollywood stylists and PR managers have reportedly blacklisted Meghan, citing brand risk toxicity. The words Meghan fatigue are now being used internally across multiple marketing teams in Los Angeles. Legal experts warn that Meghan's latest media appearances may have serious legal consequences. Williams' team has begun preparing libel-related evidence should the Crown pursue civil action. If found guilty of defamation under UK law, Meghan could face fines up to £250,000 per publication, revocation of permanent UK travel access, potential seizure of assets tied to royal-linked endorsements. In California, Archewell's foundation is also under financial strain. Public records show a 24% drop in annual donations since the start of 2025. The resignation of 2 board members following the November PR audit. Increased scrutiny from the IRS after a misreported media expense claim. An insider revealed Archewell has already laid off 8 staff members and paused its children's mental health initiative due to funding issues. She built her empire on exposure. But now the spotlight is burning everything down, said a former Archewell employee. While Meghan flails publicly, the royal family is standing firm behind William. Princess Anne gave a rare quote to The Telegraph, calling William's actions long overdue, restrained, and correct. King Charles, though battling health issues, was said to have given his full constitutional blessing to William's declaration. Queen Camilla, surprisingly, has kept a low profile, no comment on the matter, and no planned appearances this week. One royal aide whispered, "Camilla knows better than to stand in the way of a public tide. For once, she is watching and waiting." And presented. In Cation, even Prince Edward and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, have cancelled all joint Zoom appearances with Meghan-led charities. Within palace walls, there is a renewed sense of clarity. This is no longer a family feud, it is a royal preservation campaign. The final question hanging in the air: will Meghan fight in court or vanish? Sources close to her legal team suggest she is considering a slander countersuit under U.S. jurisdiction, arguing that William's statement caused intentional emotional distress and public endangerment. However, that route is risky. Royal legal precedents are strong and well documented. British public support for Meghan is at a record low, just 7% approval in recent YouGov polls. Even the U.S. media is starting to question the narrative. In a stark moment, Anderson Cooper opened his broadcast with, "Has the Duchess lost the public forever? And has she lost her crown of sympathy?" If Meghan hoped to turn the tide, she miscalculated. Less than a week after his brother's thunderous declaration, Prince Harry finally broke his silence in a 90-second video clip posted to the official Sussex Foundation website. His tone was uncharacteristically bitter. "This isn't about protecting anyone. This is about silencing my wife," Harry said, staring into the camera without a teleprompter. William's message was not royal, it was personal, and it will not go unanswered. Effort of his mother's created this bird. But Harry made a crucial misstep. He included a veiled threat. "Those in glass castles shouldn't throw stones." That phrase, interpreted by many as a reference to Catherine, was immediately condemned by both media and public commentators. Sky News described the video as emotionally charged but tactically suicidal. Piers Morgan responded in real time. "Is Harry threatening Catherine now? Is that what we've come to?" Within 2 hours, number Protect Catherine trended across the UK and Canada. The backlash was swift and brutal. Public opinion swung further. A YouGov flash poll showed 83% of respondents in the UK believed Harry's statement had no justification. 65% of Americans polled said they would no longer support projects tied to the Sussex name. Worse, Harry's former military colleagues, including Major Giles Tennant, who served alongside him in Afghanistan, issued a statement. "We respected Captain Wales, but this isn't that man anymore. Just present." Behind the scenes, Clarence House has activated what insiders are calling Operation Iron Quill, the codename for a coordinated legal and reputational defence strategy spearheaded by Sir Dominic Caldwell, Royal Chief Counsel, Lady Evelyn Norbridge, former head of BBC Compliance, now Royal Media Advisor, Baroness Elaine Charteris, retired High Court judge. Their mission: file formal complaints against CNN and Viva Plus for distributing defamatory content, pursue retractions and clarifications under UK press regulation law, initiate defamation pre-action protocols against Meghan's interview content, pressure US platforms via international cooperation agreements to demonetize content that incites hostility against royal figures. One insider called it the most aggressive legal positioning the modern monarchy has taken since the phone hacking scandals of 2011. And William has gone a step further, requesting the Privy Council to review permanent bans on Sussex-associated PR firms from receiving royal media contracts. "This is not vengeance," William reportedly told aides. "This is containment. This is my duty." And while headlines swirl around Harry and William, the world is waiting for one voice. Catherine, Princess of Wales. So far, she has remained silent. But according to sources within Kensington Palace, a statement is being written, one that will mark her first public words since the media attacks reignited in early November. Key details. The statement is expected to be released exactly 10 months after her cancer diagnosis was publicly disclosed. It will focus on truth, dignity, and public accountability, not retaliation. Catherine's team has confirmed the involvement of former BBC royal editor Laura Smythe as editorial advisor. A palace source said, "This is not about defending herself. This is about defending the idea of what royal women stand for. And she will say it clearly, without anger, without victimhood, early drafts reportedly include references to her children's emotional well-being, her decades of public service, the quiet strength of royal women before her, Elizabeth, Diana, and Anne." The release will be accompanied by a black-and-white portrait taken by Annie Leibovitz, a global press embargo coordinated across 15 time zones, a private briefing to women's cancer foundations and children's mental health NGOs, connecting the personal to the universal. Expectations are high, and insiders say William has not read the final draft by Catherine's choice. "This is her voice, and hers alone," a palace aide said. "And she knows exactly what it will cost and what it will repair." Beyond Britain, world leaders are weighing in. Canadian Prime Minister Melanie Joly stated, "I admire the royal family for their restraint and clarity. Public trust matters." Australian Senate leader Jacinta Cale said, "William has shown that monarchy in the 21st century is not about silence, it's about leadership." The Vatican issued a rare note via Cardinal Leone, praising the dignity of those who absorb injustice without surrendering grace. Within the royal family, Princess Anne has taken over 3 official events, originally assigned to Catherine, in solidarity. Lady Louise Windsor made a surprise appearance at a women's college in Edinburgh, telling students, "You don't have to speak first, but when you do, make it count." Queen Camilla remains absent from the public for the 4th consecutive week, a silence that is becoming its own statement. At exactly 9 a.m., GMT in Kensington Palace released the long-awaited statement from Catherine, Princess of Wales. The document, titled simply, "To Every Woman Who Has Been Misunderstood," was just 384 words, but it silenced the noise louder than any scandal ever could. The message began not with anger, but empathy. I've learned that silence is sometimes protection not only of oneself, but of others. But today, I choose to speak, not to defend, but to honor those who cannot. Catherine addressed the pain of public scrutiny during illness, the emotional toll on her children when falsehoods became daily headlines, her deep belief that public service must outlast private hurt. She did not name Meghan. She did not accuse. Instead, she closed with, "I will continue to walk with love, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. I am the daughter of a mother who raised me in grace. I am the mother of a daughter I want to raise with strength. And I am the wife of a man who has chosen to lead, not react. That is enough." Within 17 minutes, the post had surpassed 12 million views on official platforms. BBC, CNN, and Sky News all aired it live, cutting their usual programming. Alongside the statement was a black and white photograph by Annie Leibovitz. It showed Catherine, standing alone on the balcony of Windsor Castle, wrapped in a simple wool coat, her left hand resting gently over her heart, wearing no makeup, no jewelry except for her wedding band. Observers noted, the absence of royal symbols signified emotional truth over institutional power. The location, not Buckingham but Windsor, hinted at Catherine's grounding in tradition, not spectacle. The lighting, captured during the first rays of dawn, created what critics called a modern Queen Elizabeth I moment. Fashion blogs worldwide hailed it as the most powerful royal image of the decade. The response was immediate and thunderous. Number We Stand. With Catherine trended in 29 countries within the hour. Over 215 global media outlets republished the full letter within 6 hours. In a YouGov overnight poll, 92% of UK respondents described her statement as dignified and presidential. In Parliament, Prime Minister Emma Braverton opened session by declaring, "Let it be recorded that the future Queen showed us today how leadership is done." In the US, even outlets formerly sympathetic to Meghan began to shift. The New York Times called it the triumph of composure over chaos. Time magazine ran a cover titled, "The Queen the World Chose." And in a stunning turn, Oprah Winfrey released a personal video that evening. Sometimes we get it wrong. And when we do, we listen, we learn, and we say, "Thank you, Catherine, for your grace." At 8:10 p.m. UK time, Meghan attempted one final move, releasing a pre-recorded podcast episode titled "My Truth Has No Crown" on the Archewell channel. But it was immediately ratioed. 72% dislikes within 3 hours. Spotify removed it from trending listings by midnight. CNN, previously supportive, refused to air clips, citing inflammatory language and unverifiable claims. Meghan had tried to reclaim the narrative, but the world had already moved on. As one commenter wrote on YouTube, Catherine wrote a letter, Meghan recorded a tantrum, that's the difference. By the next day, multiple former Sussex brand sponsors began to pull out, citing reputational misalignment. A 22-second. For the first time in 8 months, King Charles, William, Catherine, Anne, Edward, and Lady Louise Windsor all appeared together at St George's Chapel for a special Christmas charity concert. 3 front-row seats, previously reserved for absent members, remained empty, unlabelled, unmentioned, but unmistakably symbolic. When Catherine entered the chapel, the audience rose not for protocol, but out of respect. As the choir sang Silent Night, William reached over and held her hand, a rare public gesture from the heir to the throne. Princess Anne later said to reporters, "She didn't fight, she stood." And that's what we're taught to do. The Royal Household Press Office issued one final note to global media. There will be no further comment on the matter of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The palace considers the issue closed. Tentry. And with that, Meghan Markle's chapter in the House of Windsor came to a quiet, irrevocable end. No exile, no drama, no ceremony, just 3 empty chairs, and one full heart, steady, silent, royal. It began like every other December 3rd in recent memory, with quiet expectation, reverent tradition, and the soft glow of Westminster Abbey illuminated by candlelight. Across the United Kingdom, families settled in to watch the now cherished Together at Christmas concert, an annual broadcast hosted by Catherine, Princess of Wales. What they received, however, was not simply an evening of carols and compassion, it was a cultural crossroads. Because this year, just as Catherine's event began airing, another broadcast flickered onto millions of screens thousands of miles away, in tone, intent, and timing. From Montecito, California, came Meghan Markle. Polished, curated, intentional. Her heartfelt holiday special, described as a celebration of family, warmth, and wellness, debuted on Netflix and a major U.S. network within the exact hour of Catherine's concert, a timing decision that, once scrutinized, shattered the illusion of innocent overlap. This was not an accident, it was a challenge. And the deeper the press, analysts, and palace insiders dug, the clearer the pattern became. Meghan's move wasn't about Christmas at all, it was about control of the conversation. While Catherine stood beneath the vaulted arches of Westminster Abbey welcoming community volunteers, bereaved families, and NHS workers, Meghan lit candles in a designer kitchen, framed by muted holiday decor and a strategically placed copy of her children's book. She spoke about redefining family and breaking inherited patterns. The contrast couldn't have been sharper or more intentional. Multiple journalists in Los Angeles confirmed through production documents that Meghan's special had been originally slated to air on November 29, 2025. Early marketing assets, sponsor communications, and social influencer tie-ins reference this date openly. It was only after Kensington Palace confirmed Catherine's concert broadcast for December 3rd that the schedule was mysteriously revised. No explanation was given. No apology offered. Instead, the Sussex team did what it always does: acted first, deflected later. This wasn't a misfire, said one US network scheduler who spoke anonymously. It was placement. This only works if you launch the special when people are already tuned into royal content. December 3rd gave them that thanks to Catherine. For those unfamiliar with the Sussexes' post-royal media strategy, the date clash may appear tone-deaf at worst. But seasoned royal analysts, palace aides, and media scholars see something more refined, a now repeating strategy of contrast hijacking. This is not Meghan's first foray into timing a release against a major royal moment. 2021. The Oprah interview aired as Prince Philip was hospitalized. 2022. The Netflix documentary trailer dropped during William and Catherine's Boston Earthshot tour. 2023. An Archetypes episode about toxic tradition coincided with Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee. 2024. Harry's memoir Spare leaked key excerpts as coronation planning intensified for King Charles. Each time, the Sussex camp downplayed the overlap. Each time, palace insiders privately expressed frustration. But this latest incident is considered the most egregious, yet not only because of the timing, but because of what Catherine's concert represents. Together at Christmas, now in its 4th year, has become more than a broadcast. It's a quiet national ritual, a moment of stillness, dignity, and emotional generosity. Catherine doesn't use the platform to speak about herself. She uses it to spotlight early childhood initiatives, elevate carers, and comfort those experiencing grief or hardship. In contrast, Meghan's special, though dressed in festive tones, was unmistakably commercial. Behind the scenes, PR strategists and advertising executives revealed the true motive: visibility through juxtaposition. A senior executive affiliated with the holiday specials production noted, "We weren't chasing Catherine's audience, we were chasing her headline power. If she's in the news cycle, Meghan gets coverage by association, especially when there's a clean narrative split: monarchy versus modernity, tradition versus self-reinvention, duty versus freedom." This strategy is called opportunity collision scheduling, a move that doesn't just aim for attention, but forces media comparison. In public relations, this is a goldmine. Even negative press can be repurposed into relevance. And for Meghan's team, whose brand depends on global spotlight, relevance is currency. The Christmas special itself is designed more like a franchise pilot than a one-off. Sponsored table settings, branded cookware, subtle fashion partnerships, it's not just a program, it's a prototype. But prototypes only sell if they dominate their debut week. December 3rd offered the perfect storm: high holiday traffic, royal audience overlap, and the promise of direct contrast with Catherine. Kensington Palace did not issue a response. They didn't need to. In the royal world, silence can speak louder than any press release. And this evening their message was clear. Catherine's work is not a competition, it's a calling. Sources close to the palace confirmed that the Princess of Wales was briefed but unfazed. Instead of reacting, she focused on the event itself, selecting readings, rehearsing with children's choirs, and personally writing letters to families who had lost loved ones in 2025. Her concert's theme, Light in Times of Loss, was chosen months in advance, long before any programming clash emerged. One royal aide summed it up perfectly. The princess doesn't compete for attention. She commands it by being consistent, humble, and present. Oprah. Across social media, this grace didn't go unnoticed. Viewers flooded platforms with praise, not just for the music or staging, but for Catherine's tone. One comment read, "Meghan put on a show. Catherine offered a moment of peace." Another simply said, "She doesn't talk about service, she lives it." What happened on December 3rd wasn't just a scheduling conflict. It was a battle of ideologies, a cultural split, 2 women, 2 screens, 2 versions of what it means to be seen. Catherine offered tradition, community, and silent strength. Meghan offered sparkle, strategy, and curated storytelling. And while both broadcasts made headlines, only one touched hearts across the nation. In the next part, we will unpack the long-running media strategy behind Meghan's collision campaigns, from Oprah to Netflix, from Spotify to Coronation Week, and explore why this pattern of disruption is no longer being dismissed as coincidence. The December 3rd clash between Meghan Markle's holiday special and Princess Catherine's Together at Christmas concert didn't emerge in isolation. It is part of a now unmistakable pattern. Since stepping back from royal duties in 2020, Meghan and Prince Harry have repeatedly launched major media moments that coincide with, interrupt, or overshadow key milestones in the royal family's calendar. This isn't speculation, it's a strategy. The most well-known example remains the Oprah Winfrey interview, which aired in March 2021, just days before Buckingham Palace released updates on Prince Philip's health. While Meghan's team insisted the timing was unrelated, the result was predictable. Coverage of a frail, hospitalized royal was instantly overshadowed by bombshells about racism, isolation, and family betrayal. Then came December 2022, when the Sussexes dropped their Netflix docuseries trailer during William and Catherine's Earthshot Prize tour in Boston. A trip meant to showcase environmental innovation and future-facing monarchy was suddenly rerouted into a global spectacle of scandalous soundbites. The Archetypes podcast, a project pitched as empowering women, released a special episode on institutional pressure the same week as Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee in 2023. Royal sources, attempting to maintain unity, stayed silent but privately noted the disruption. And when King Charles was preparing for his 2024 coronation, Harry's memoir Spare mysteriously leaked early chapters. Coverage meant to focus on the historic transition of power was instead dominated by headlines about frostbitten anatomy, royal spats, and deeply personal grievances. Each time, Meghan and Harry's media products were positioned as honest storytelling. But the release timing has consistently aligned with high-profile royal events, creating forced comparisons, narrative confusion, and split public focus. This tactic, known in media circles as narrative collision, is designed not to replace the royal story but to ride it. In doing so, the Sussex brand stays anchored in relevance, controversy, and identity friction. But that approach comes at a cost. Each collision pushes public opinion further apart. Those who see Meghan as a disruptor versus those who see her as a calculated opportunist. And as we saw on December 3rd, Catherine has now emerged as the quiet counterweight. She doesn't respond. She doesn't retaliate. She simply shows up with dignity, purpose, and grace. As we'll explore in Part 3, Meghan's need for visibility may be real, but it's Catherine's authenticity that is winning hearts. And that may be the one thing no PR strategy can manufacture. What unfolded on December 3rd, 2025, was more than a media clash. It was a cultural referendum, a moment in which the public was offered a rare side-by-side comparison, not just of two women, but of two worldviews. One anchored in tradition and quiet service. The other is defined by reinvention and personal narrative. On one side, Catherine, Princess of Wales, standing in Westminster Abbey, surrounded by community heroes. On the other, Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, bathed in soft lighting, telling her version of the holiday spirit to the camera. This was not just Catherine versus Meghan, it was the crown versus the brand. And in the court of public opinion, the difference was not lost. Catherine's Together at Christmas concert has evolved since its inception in 2021. What began as a gesture of national healing during the pandemic has become a seasonal cornerstone highlighting service, sacrifice, and shared humanity. Each year, the concert carries a theme tied to the real struggles of the British public. This year's theme, Light in Times of Loss, centered on grief, economic hardship, and rebuilding lives. From letters written by children who lost parents to performances by hospice choirs, it was a tapestry of unfiltered British life. Meghan's special, in contrast, was meticulously styled. The kitchen glowed with candlelight. Her outfit was flawless. Her narration was layered with phrases about finding your chosen family and curating joy. It was intimate, but it also felt constructed. Even the smallest elements, the script, the placement of props, the background music, were designed to evoke warmth, yet never quite transcended performance. This is not a criticism of production value. Meghan's team understands optics, framing, and digital storytelling better than most. But what she lacked was grounding. There were no everyday families, no frontline workers, no mention of hardship beyond abstract terms. For a program claiming to celebrate tradition, there was precious little of it, no legacy, no shared history, no collective memory, just a polished broadcast of a woman selling an idea of family that felt detached from the roots of community. At the heart of the contrast lies a deeper question. What does it mean to be royal in the 21st century? Catherine's answer has always been subtle but consistent. Royalty, to her, is a vessel for public service. She rarely gives interviews. She doesn't promote products. Her brand is not Catherine Middleton the woman, but the institution she now upholds. Her wardrobe, speech, and behavior reflect continuity. Even in modernizing the role, she remains deferential to its legacy. Meghan's approach is inverse. She left the royal family but didn't leave the title. In fact, she's built a commercial identity that leans heavily on royal symbolism. The intro card for her holiday special, A Heartfelt Holiday with Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, was stylized in a calligraphic font, mimicking palace branding. Her aesthetic mimicked royal elegance. The irony is sharp. Meghan critiques the monarchy as an outdated, restrictive system, yet markets its visual identity as aspirational branding. A palace insider summarized it plainly. Catherine carries the weight of the crown. Meghan sells the shape of it. This dynamic has been a source of tension for years. While Buckingham Palace formally instructed the Sussexes in 2020 not to use their HRH titles for commercial purposes, Meghan has continued to deploy the Duchess label across platforms, partnerships, and productions. The palace remains publicly silent, but behind the scenes, frustration simmers not over competition, but over appropriation. In contrast, Catherine's rise has been defined not by drama, but by consistency. Over the past decade, she has transformed from a cautious royal wife into a confident stateswoman. Her work in early childhood development, mental health, and addiction support is long-term, measured, and often away from cameras. She avoids social media posturing. Her image isn't curated, it's observed. This authenticity has begun to bear fruit. According to a YouGov poll released days after the December 3rd broadcasts, Catherine's favourability in the UK rose to 82%, the highest since Queen Elizabeth II's passing. Meghan, by contrast, dropped to 27%, her lowest since 2021. Even in the US, where Meghan once enjoyed significant public sympathy, reaction to her Christmas special was divided. Major outlets noted the gloss-over-substance tone of her show. The contrast between the two women was perhaps best illustrated by an unscripted moment caught on camera. Backstage, at Westminster Abbey, Catherine was seen gently adjusting the robe of a nervous child before he stepped onto the stage. There were no handlers in view, no awareness of the camera, just a quiet act of care. It wasn't included in the final broadcast, but a clip leaked online and it went viral. Meghan had a scripted moment about the meaning of motherhood. Catherine lived it in a blink. In today's media-saturated landscape, where every moment is measured in clicks and virality, Catherine has found power in restraint. Her leadership is not reactive, but reflective. Where Meghan releases a podcast, Catherine visits a school. Where Meghan signs a Netflix deal, Catherine meets with bereaved families. Where Meghan crafts a quote about identity, Catherine offers silence and presence. This isn't a judgment of Meghan's ambition, but it is a recognition that royalty, true institutional royalty, isn't defined by spotlight, but by symbolic endurance. December 3rd made this clearer than ever. As Meghan attempted to reframe herself as a modern holiday matriarch, the British public gravitated towards something quieter, older, and deeper. The sense that in Catherine, the monarchy has found not just a new face, but a steady heart. In the hours and days following the December 3rd programming clash between Meghan Markle's holiday special and Princess Catherine's Together at Christmas concert, something shifted, and it wasn't just viewer ratings. It was the tone, the coverage, the headlines, the public's gut instinct. The entire cultural undercurrent surrounding the two women began to tilt in one clear direction. Because while Meghan's team may have mastered the art of media saturation, it is Catherine who has mastered the deeper game: media trust. The morning after the broadcasts, newspapers across the UK and Commonwealth carried glowing write-ups of Catherine's Christmas concert. The Times called it a balm for a bruised nation. The Telegraph praised her unshakable grace. Even The Guardian, often sceptical of royal events, admitted, "This year, the Princess of Wales offered something the country quietly craved: sincerity." Meanwhile, headlines about Meghan's special were laced with criticism and raised eyebrows. Variety ran, "Dueling Duchesses, Meghan's glitter versus Catherine's gravitas." The Daily Mail went harsher. "Meghan's holiday show collides with Catherine's concert and public sentiment turns cold." The tone wasn't just unfavourable, it was fatigued. There was a growing sense of weariness. Meghan's media strategies, once lauded as brave, were increasingly viewed as transparent. The audience could see the pattern, and this time, they weren't buying it. One popular comment on X, formerly Twitter, captured the mood. "I watched Catherine's concert with my daughter. She cried during the children's choir. It felt real. Then I watched Meghan's special. It felt like a pitch." That word pitch resonated. Because while Catherine's concert offered a message of collective healing, Meghan's special felt like a product rollout. From the sponsor tie-ins to the heavily edited talking points about reclaiming joy, it lacked the one thing audiences seek during the holidays: emotional truth. In terms of sheer numbers, Catherine's concert dominated the UK viewership. Over 8.4 million tuned in across BBC, ITV, and syndicated Commonwealth channels. Streaming figures showed another 2.1 million replays within 48 hours. Meghan's special, despite global release across Netflix and a primetime US network, peaked at 1.2 million viewers during its first 24 hours, a respectable number, but far short of the buzz her team likely expected. More telling, however, was the audience engagement. On social media, Catherine's concert trended for nearly 10 hours in the UK. Video clips of her helping children, reading tributes, and welcoming nurses went viral, shared across age groups and political lines. Meanwhile, Meghan's clips were met with mixed reactions, some praise, but also an avalanche of cynicism, especially from those pointing out the programme's strategic timing. One post read, "Meghan said she wanted to escape the institution, so why does she show up in its shadow every single time?" The sentiment was no longer niche, it was mainstream. Meghan's decision to shift her release date from November 29th to December 3rd after Catherine's concert had been announced was a tactical gamble. In PR terms, it's called counter-programming. The idea, if you can't compete with the event, compete with the timing. Hijack the media narrative by forcing journalists to mention both. It works in Hollywood, but it failed here. Why? Because royal audiences are not passive consumers. They remember, they track patterns. And after multiple overlaps, Oprah before Philip's passing, Netflix during Earthshot, archetypes during the Jubilee. Spare before the coronation, they saw the tactic for what it was: disruption, masquerading as coincidence. Even traditionally sympathetic commentators began questioning the Sussex strategy. A former BBC royal analyst tweeted, "The Sussexes have every right to tell their story, but repeatedly using royal events as springboards reveals a deeper dependency they claim to reject. Ven ovotu." And that dependency on titles, on contrast, on timing, has become Meghan's Achilles heel. The public isn't punishing her for seeking independence. They're questioning why she still markets herself as if she's inside the system she left. Interestingly, while UK coverage leaned heavily in Catherine's favour, American media was more split. Outlets like The Hollywood Reporter praised the production quality of Meghan's special. People magazine ran a neutral feature, focusing on her message of healing. But even in the US, the tone wasn't exuberant, it was measured. There's a reason. The American public is beginning to grow distant from the Sussex narrative. The same voices who once celebrated the couple's freedom flight are now asking uncomfortable questions. Why continue using titles if the monarchy is oppressive? Why drop emotional content during major royal events? Why critique tradition while mimicking its visuals? This dissonance is eroding Meghan's credibility, not in a scandalous tabloid way, but in a slow, reputational drip. And in contrast, Catherine's credibility continues to rise. While the palace remained officially silent about the programming clash, their internal response was unmistakable. Princess Anne attended the concert in person, seated in the front row beside Lady Louise Windsor. Prince William delivered a rare televised tribute, calling the event a reflection of the quiet strength my grandmother once carried, now carried forward by Catherine. End quote. King Charles, though engaged elsewhere, sent a symbolic candle from the Chapel Royal to be lit during the first carol, a gesture of silent endorsement. Royal sources later confirmed to The Times that the palace was disappointed but not surprised by Meghan's scheduling decision. But their response was classic Windsor: symbolism over statement. And it worked. Where Meghan sought to generate buzz, the Crown generated meaning. Catherine didn't chase headlines, she earned reverence. As of December 5th, polls conducted by YouGov and Ipsos show a significant boost in Catherine's public standing across the UK, Canada, and Australia. Even in the US, where Meghan once outpolled all working royals, support has dipped among key demographics. More importantly, Catherine's emotional favorability has increased. People don't just respect her, they trust her. That's a priceless currency in an age of manufactured narratives. In Part 5, we'll explore how this moment has reshaped internal dynamics within the royal family and how Catherine's rise has become not just a media victory, but a symbolic consolidation of royal identity. In the aftermath of December 3rd's high-profile clash, something quietly, profoundly changed within the royal institution, not with press releases or palace statements, but with alignment, with solidarity, with a renewed clarity about who represents the heart of the monarchy going forward. Because while Meghan Markle may have staged a glittering holiday special, it was Catherine, Princess of Wales, who emerged not just as the public favourite, but as the symbolic compass of the royal family. And this wasn't by accident. It was by design of character, not strategy. In the days surrounding the Westminster Abbey concert, royal watchers noted a rare display of internal alignment. Senior royals closed ranks not in defensiveness, but in quiet affirmation of Catherine's leadership. The gesture from King Charles, sending a candle from the Chapel Royal to be lit during the concert's opening, was steeped in symbolism. It honoured faith, tradition, and continuity, but more subtly, it signalled trust. Meanwhile, Princess Anne's early arrival and high-visibility seating beside Lady Louise Windsor wasn't mere attendance, it was a statement. Anne, the monarchy's most disciplined worker, doesn't waste appearances. When she shows up, it matters. And she chose to lend her weight to Catherine not just as sister-in-law, but as successor to the Queen's moral centre. Prince William, too, offered a rare emotional tribute on air, calling the concert a continuation of my grandmother's quiet legacy, now carried by my wife. His message was direct, unshaken, and entirely void of distraction. He didn't need to name Meghan. The contrast was already clear. This moment, this realignment, is what palace insiders have been anticipating for over a year. As King Charles's reign matures and his health remains under careful watch, the monarchy has increasingly leaned on two stabilizing forces: duty and dignity. Catherine embodies both. In contrast, Meghan's brand, despite its commercial success, has become too volatile for royal association. It generates engagement, but not goodwill. It sparks conversation, not cohesion. And most importantly, it operates outside the values that the crown depends on: service, humility, and restraint. This is why December 3rd became a tipping point. The palace didn't just reaffirm Catherine, it re-centered the royal rhythm around her. For the British public, this wasn't framed as a battle between women. It was a referendum on tone, on motive, on meaning. Catherine didn't win the night by outshining Meghan, she won by refusing to play the same game. And that, in the monarchy's long story, is how leadership is earned. In the final part, we explore the long-term consequences of this recalibration, from Meghan's fading media momentum to Catherine's growing symbolic power, and how December 3rd may one day be remembered as the moment the monarchy's future found its voice. December 3rd, 2025, began as a night of lights, music, and parallel broadcasts. But by the end of it, something more profound had occurred, a cultural turning point that defined not just how the world sees Meghan Markle and Catherine, Princess of Wales, but how it understands the deeper question behind them both. What does modern power look like, and who deserves to hold it? The story that played out across two screens was more than a scheduling conflict. It was a test of two visions for public influence. One built on proximity to legacy, the other grounded in the living practice of it. One polished and personal, the other quiet and communal. One broadcasted for clicks, the other built for continuity. And the public answered the question in real time. They didn't just watch Catherine, they chose her. From the moment Meghan Markle stepped into the royal spotlight, her brand was forged in disruption. She was heralded by supporters as a modernizer, a woman too bold for archaic institutions. For a time, that narrative worked. The world, eager for a new archetype, embraced the idea of a duchess who broke free. But freedom, in Meghan's model, didn't just mean departure, it meant leveraged contrast. Her success increasingly depended on framing herself against the very monarchy she exited. And as December 3rd made painfully clear, that strategy has its limits. Her holiday special, despite high production value and an undeniably poised performance, lacked something intangible but essential: anchor. It spoke of love but showed detachment. It referenced family but presented none. It praised tradition but offered little more than aesthetic gestures: candlelight, crimson, velvet, and carefully curated heirloom props that couldn't mask a deeper absence. What Meghan had in presentation, she lacked in presence. And audiences noticed. Catherine, by contrast, didn't claim power. She simply exercised it. Without branding, without self-reference, without calling attention to herself. She stood in a centuries-old abbey, surrounded by real people, grief counselors, teachers, families of the fallen, and said almost nothing about her own story. Her power didn't need narrative, it had credibility. The December 3rd event revealed more than 2 different communication styles. It exposed the changing appetite of audiences in a post-crisis world. After years of scandal cycles, sensational memoirs, and back-to-back interviews, people aren't just exhausted. They're recalibrating what authenticity feels like. Meghan's strategy has always been to control her story. Catherine's strength has been to live within one. That distinction matters. One asks for validation. The other earns it through service. Catherine's success on that night was not viral. It was visceral. Her words were brief, her gestures are quiet, but they landed. In a nation still navigating economic uncertainty, mourning post-pandemic losses, and searching for moral constancy, Catherine offered something rare, a royal moment that felt truly national. Not about her, about us. Inside Buckingham Palace, no statements were issued. But everything: gestures, symbols, silence spoke volumes. King Charles's gesture of sending a royal candle wasn't about stagecraft, it was about continuity, a signal that while the world speculated on distraction, the monarchy stayed centered. Princess Anne's visible support was institutional. William's on-air tribute was personal. The result was absolute. The full weight of the monarchy stood behind Catherine. Even figures previously cautious about publicly aligning appeared firm. A former senior advisor was quoted off-record saying, "The Princess of Wales has become the monarchy's lodestar, not because she sought it, but because she embodies it." Contrast that with Meghan's media team, which spent the following week issuing clarifications, pushing behind-the-scenes featurettes, and scrambling to justify the timing as logistical. But the public no longer believed in coincidence. Not after Oprah. Not after Spare. Not after Earthshot. Not after the Jubilee. And not now. Meghan's December 3rd special was not a failure in the technical sense. It aired. It trended briefly in the US. It pleased some segments of her loyal base. But its impact was fleeting. It vanished from headlines within 48 hours. No policy was shaped. No cause advanced. No community transformed. It was, in the end, another episode. Catherine's concert, by contrast, had ripple effects still being felt. Donations to featured charities surged by 28% in the following week. Viewership in rural regions hit all-time highs. Letters from children read during the broadcast were reprinted in national papers, starting discussions on bereavement support. The event is now proposed to become part of the UK's formal civic calendar. This is the difference between symbolism and substance. Catherine isn't just representing the monarchy, she is reshaping it. Gently, persistently, without spectacle. Historians may look back on December 3rd, 2025, not just as the night of 2 broadcasts, but as a pivot point, a moment when the future of modern royalty came into focus, not through declarations, but through contrast. Meghan's special showed what the Sussex brand has become: reactive, commercial, and reliant on shadows of the past. Catherine's concert revealed what the monarchy still can be: generational, grounded, and quietly moral. This contrast didn't just inform public opinion, it cemented allegiance, not just to a woman, but to what she represents. And that is why, in the eyes of millions, Catherine didn't just win the night, she claimed the future. Meghan built the system. Harry went crazy when all the legal investigations pointed to him, while Meghan ran all the shares, spending, work, and businesses, with her shares under Archie and Lilibeth's names, and Harry wouldn't get a penny if he left. But when the royal family discovered the money, only one person was held accountable. For decades, the royal audit was just a formality. But this December, an accountant discovered discrepancies. Transfers related to secret deals, private dinners, and names no longer mentioned at the palace. What started as a small note became a financial settlement. Meghan remained silent. Harry began to question. Anne set the rules. And the monarchy. They had just declared war on betrayal. This wasn't just a scandal, this was the royal family's moment of retaliation. Welcome to the Royal Internal Network. The periodic audit at Buckingham Palace has operated with meticulous precision for centuries. Every pound spent by the royal family is recorded, tracked, and scrutinized. Most years, the annual audit is straightforward and unremarkable. But in early December 2025, something strange emerged in the figures. Margaret Hartley, a senior accountant with nearly 20 years of experience in the Royal Finance Office, discovered this. She knows the rules. She understands how money flows between the different royal families. This was evident when reviewing the Sussex family's spending before Harry and Meghan retired from royal duties. She compared the payment dates with the publicly available schedule. She compared the invoice with the actual events. The more she examined it, the more worried she became. Published 12 December 2025. The royal household has issued one of the most severe and unambiguous statements of the modern era. Financial misconduct associated with the former Duchess of Sussex has triggered a full institutional review, initiated by the Princess Royal and overseen by senior forensic officers of the Crown. OK. With those words, the United Kingdom awoke this morning to the most consequential royal scandal since the 1990 seconds. And with Prince Harry visibly shaken, the crisis has only deepened. For the past week, the monarchy has been engulfed in revelations stemming from a classified investigation led jointly by Princess Anne and Margaret Hartley, the Crown's longest-serving senior auditor. The probe uncovered a series of deliberate financial concealments tied directly to Meghan Markle's activities during and immediately after her tenure as a working royal. What began as a routine year-end audit has now exposed a sophisticated web of offshore structures, concealed income streams, and unauthorized disclosures of internal royal information to external media and entertainment entities. But today's shock is not merely institutional, it is profoundly personal. According to palace insiders, Prince Harry has retreated from public view after learning that nearly every legal responsibility, liability, and potential financial exposure surrounding the scandal falls squarely on him, not Meghan. The reason is brutally simple. Meghan's corporate interests, investments, and even her California-based production equity have been legally held in the names of their two children, Archie and Lilibet, since 2019. Harry, meanwhile, signed several early operational documents when they were still working royals. If the matter escalates into litigation or asset disputes, Harry is the one left with no protective structure, no financial immunity, and quite possibly no assets at all. Sources close to the palace confirm that Harry, despite his loud initial declaration last week that he would stand unwaveringly with Meghan, has since grown hesitant, withdrawn, and increasingly unsure. Advisors in California say he has been distressed and blindsided by how expertly Meghan shielded herself legally while leaving him exposed to British parliamentary scrutiny and Crown jurisdiction. One insider described his state bluntly. He has realized he may walk away from this with nothing, and for the first time, he is asking questions he should have asked years ago. Meanwhile, all eyes are on Princess Anne, whose uncompromising approach has defined this investigation from the outset. Known for her discipline and intolerance for institutional exploitation, Anne has spoken publicly for the first time since the audit began. Standing outside Marlborough House late last night, she delivered a measured but unmistakably forceful statement. The Crown cannot and will not allow its integrity to be compromised by those who view service as an opportunity for personal gain. The investigation continues with full authority and without interference. End quote. Her words were widely interpreted as a direct message, not only to Meghan but also to Harry, whose previous refusals to engage with palace inquiries had angered senior officials. It was Anne who insisted the internal review include retroactive cross-referencing of Sussex-related expenditures, digital correspondence, and vendor contracts dating back to mid-2018. It was also Anne who ordered the immediate lockdown of the Royal Finance Office after discrepancies surfaced in November. According to multiple palace departments, Anne's involvement has been transformative. Staff who have worked under 4 reigns describe this as the most rigorous internal examination they have ever witnessed. And by placing the Crown not personalities at the centre of her message, Anne has won both domestic and Commonwealth support. The palace's decisive tone has drawn comparisons to earlier controversies involving Queen Camilla, whose past reputation once threatened the monarchy's public standing. But senior advisers have been quick to emphasize the difference. Camilla's scandals were public relations crises, not structural threats. Meghan's, by contrast, raised the spectre of financial exploitation, unauthorized information sales, and institutional manipulation issues that strike at the very legitimacy of constitutional monarchy. King Charles has maintained a solemn, steady posture throughout. Late yesterday, through the Lord Chamberlain's office, His Majesty stated, "The integrity of the Crown's financial conduct is fundamental. No individual past or present is exempt from the standards that safeguard public trust." End quote. The statement signals a united front between Charles, Anne, and William, who, while maintaining personal restraint, is said to be deeply angered by the discovery that internal family conversations and ceremonial events were monetized through undisclosed channels. For a future king whose central mission has been modernizing the monarchy with transparency, the betrayal cuts sharply. And so the world watches. Meghan has remained silent for the past 24 hours. Harry remains in California, suspended in a state of uncertainty, publicly loyal to his wife, but privately confronted with the legal and financial consequences of a system she built without his knowledge. The Crown has spoken. The investigation continues. And Princess Anne is only getting started. The deliberate, calculated structure that Princess Anne and Auditor Margaret Hartley spent weeks disentangling. What began as a handful of mismatched expenses has grown into a documented pattern of concealment, stretching from late 2018 through the Sussex's departure in early 2020. According to internal financial memoranda reviewed by senior palace officials, Meghan's offshore architecture did not emerge spontaneously. Rather, it unfolded in precise stages. First, the quiet establishment of a consultancy pipeline in late 2018. Then, the incorporation of proxy companies in the Virgin Islands, followed by a Delaware-registered shell with no employees, no office, and no visible operating purpose. By the time the Channel Islands account was opened in March 2019, the structure was already capable of receiving significant payments without raising suspicion. The problem was not the offshore account itself. Offshore banking is legal. The problem was timing, and volume, and correlation. Margaret Hartley's timeline, presented to senior advisers last week, showed that payments into the account repeatedly coincided with private family milestones, a confidential strategy meeting at Sandringham, a high-level state dinner at Buckingham Palace, even the private christening arrangements for Archie. With each event came a payment, £10,000, £25,000, sometimes more originating from entertainment companies or media groups later associated with exclusive coverage. The conclusion was unavoidable. Information was leaking, and someone was being paid. Anne's reaction to the timeline was described by staff as controlled fury. For decades, she has been the monarchy's backbone, its most relentless defender against erosion of standards. To see the Crown's private moments aligned with bank transfers was, in her words, an affront not only to the institution, but to the late Queen herself. Prince William, upon reviewing the same documents, reportedly remained silent for nearly a minute before closing the folder and stating simply, "This ends here." Those present interpreted the words not as anger, but as a declaration firm, final, unshakable. For King Charles, the implications cut deeper. The monarch's advisors had previously weathered scandals centered on perception, public image, narrative missteps, leaks of gossip. But this was different. This was structural sabotage, conducted from inside the family at a time when Charles was attempting to modernize the monarchy under the principles of transparency and service. Meanwhile, Meghan's camp has struggled. Privately, several US-based associates have admitted they were unaware of the offshore arrangements. One advisor confessed that the financial maze surrounding Meghan's companies was too complex for any outsider to fully understand. In royal circles, that complexity is viewed not as confusion, but as intention. And then there is Harry adrift. He has not issued a new statement. He has made no appearances. Those close to him say he is processing the unimaginable, that the woman he defended against his family for years may have constructed an entire financial apparatus behind his back while leaving his name attached to key operational liabilities. For now, the palace moves forward, united and methodical. Anne and Margaret continue coordinating with Crown legal officers, constructing what one senior aide described as the most comprehensive internal audit since the Windsor reforms of the 1992. When Adation sided, the scandal is no longer about speculation. It is about documentation. And as the investigation advances, one truth becomes clear. Every new document strengthens the Crown and weakens Meghan Markle. By the third week of the investigation, it had become unmistakably clear. Princess Anne was no longer merely overseeing the inquiry, she was commanding it. What began as a procedural review of Sussex-related finances had evolved into a full-scale institutional examination, shaped entirely by Anne's discipline, precision, and refusal to tolerate ambiguity. Behind closed doors at St James's Palace, Anne convened what insiders now call the pivotal session, a private meeting with senior legal counsel, the Lord Chamberlain, Margaret Hartley, and 2 external forensic consultants brought in under strict confidentiality. For nearly 4 hours, the Princess Royal pressed for clarity on every discrepancy, every unexplained transaction, and every breach of protocol identified in the growing dossier. Observers inside the room described her demeanor as stern, unyielding, and entirely focused on structural integrity rather than personal drama. One advisor later remarked, "This was Anne at her purest form, zero tolerance for manipulation, no patience for excuses, and absolute loyalty to the Crown." It one word of their replies. It was during this session that Margaret Hartley unveiled the most troubling discovery yet. A series of internal communications from 2019 indicating that Meghan had declined to use the designated royal financial oversight channels for certain engagements, opting instead to route contracts through her privately connected consultancy firms. These choices had been attributed at the time to administrative misunderstandings. Now, in context, they reflected a deliberate pattern of circumvention. Anne's response was immediate. She authorized a comprehensive cross-referencing of all Sussex engagements between May 2018 and March 2020, requiring departments across Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, and Clarence House to submit archived records within 72 hours. Multiple staff members, some no longer working for the royal household, were recalled to provide sworn statements. The scale of the inquiry was unprecedented. But what made it extraordinary was not its size, it was the speed and unanimity with which senior royals aligned themselves behind Anne. Prince William, emerging from a late-night briefing, expressed what aides described as quiet but unmistakable resolve. He reportedly told his private secretary, "We must protect the institution my grandmother devoted her life to. No one is exempt." Emma, Catherine, though maintaining her typical distance from confrontation, instructed her communications team to prepare for extended public engagement responsibilities, signaling the couple's readiness to stabilize public perception once the investigation reached its conclusion. King Charles, for his part, adopted a grave, constitutional posture. Sources confirm he personally reviewed documents that detailed how Meghan's alleged information leaks coincided with sensitive family milestones, material that, if weaponized, could have compromised private negotiations and state-facing preparations. To Charles, the scandal represented not only financial impropriety, but a direct violation of the sanctity of royal trust. One palace historian compared the moment to the period following the Camilla Anderson fallout decades earlier. But this time, the implications run much deeper. Camilla's controversies were reputational. Meghan's reach into legal and financial domains threatens constitutional dignity itself. As the inquiry widened, Meghan remained notably silent. California-based spokespeople offered short, vague remarks emphasizing her commitment to transparency, but avoided acknowledging the offshore structures entirely. Meanwhile, legal cautions around Harry intensified. Internal assessments warned him that, should civil or parliamentary investigations proceed, he, not Meghan, would bear the initial burden of inquiry, as several key documents from 2019 bore his signature as the acting senior royal representative at the time of authorization. This revelation hardened the royal stance. Anne, in a rare moment of private candor recounted by an aide, said, "For years we assumed naivety. But naivety does not construct networks of shell companies." The comment echoed a growing consensus. This was not accidental misconduct. It was strategy calculated, layered, and meticulously insulated from legal liability. By the end of the week, the working group presented Anne with a 64-page interim report. It contained timeline charts, payment clusters, contract deviations, and newly recovered emails whose phrasing left little room for interpretation. The Princess Royal reviewed the final page, closed the folder deliberately, and issued the line that has since become emblematic of the investigation's tone. "The Crown will not be compromised. Proceed." With that, Anne signalled not merely continuation, but escalation. The inquiry would enter its next phase: royal accountability and public declaration. And as the machinery of the monarchy prepared to move forward, Meghan Markle stood increasingly isolated, not only from the institution she once joined, but from the husband, who now found himself entangled in a legal labyrinth he never saw coming. By early December, the investigation had moved beyond preliminary audits and into a phase the palace privately refers to as royal reckoning, a decisive moment in which the institution must assess not merely the facts of misconduct, but the lasting implications for legitimacy, succession, and public trust. At the center of this storm stood Princess Anne, whose leadership transformed the inquiry from a procedural review into the most comprehensive internal investigation since the financial reforms instituted after the Queen Mother's archives were unsealed in the early 2000s. Anne's determination was not theatrical, it was structural. Her message, repeated across meetings, briefings, and circulars, was uncompromising. The Crown is not a stage for personal ambition, it is a trust. You either serve it, or you exploit it, and if you exploit it, you answer for it. This philosophy guided every step of the escalating probe. Margaret Hartley's team, strengthened by additional forensic consultants, reconstructed a 5-year digital footprint of transactions tied to Meghan's offshore network. Documents revealed coordinated payments from entertainment companies, PR intermediaries, and foreign media outlets. Several payments were linked to consultations, content briefs, or logistical insights, terms palace auditors had never encountered in relation to royal engagements. One particularly concerning trail involved a Los Angeles media firm whose payment history aligned precisely with internal royal scheduling sessions. In one case, a briefing conducted at Clarence House regarding planned Commonwealth tours appeared mirrored days later in a tabloid report featuring uncanny specificity. Margaret's analysis concluded that the timing indicates premeditated release of sensitive operational information rather than coincidental reporting. The gravity of this discovery reverberated through Buckingham Palace. It was no longer about personal misconduct, it was about compromised royal confidentiality, a breach which could endanger diplomatic relations, security protocols, and even state negotiations. The investigation unit was divided into 4 teams: financial structures and beneficiary mapping, communications and leak correlation, legal exposure and parliamentary risk, royal conduct and protocol breach review, and chaired a daily briefing, often lasting well into the evening. Staff who had served under the late Queen Elizabeth described Anne's discipline as the closest living match to Her Majesty's uncompromising standards. William attended these sessions with unwavering focus. Those present recall that he never raised his voice, never speculated, and never personalized the issue. Instead, he evaluated each revelation with the perspective of a future monarch, how the institution must respond, how transparency must be upheld, and how trust must be rebuilt. "This is not about personalities," he said in one meeting. "This is about protecting the monarchy's ability to serve." Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Harry's situation deteriorated. Legal advisors in California began warning him that the structures surrounding Meghan's companies, particularly the decision to place equity under Archie and Lilibet's names, left him with no legal control and no claim to shared marital assets. The palace's internal legal review reached the same conclusion. Harry held liability without authority, a rare and precarious position. He was, as one senior aide put it, a shield without armor. Sources close to Harry describe him pacing rooms, rereading documents, questioning timelines. His initial defiance, his declaration that the palace was persecuting his wife, appeared to crack as he realized the legal consequences pointed to him, not her. The silence around him grew louder. Public expectation grew, speculation swelled, and Harry, the once rebellious prince, now seemed suspended in a state of fear and disbelief. Inside the palace, quiet conversations began drawing comparisons between Meghan's unfolding scandal and the controversies once surrounding Camilla in the 1992 and early 2000s. Yet anyone who examined the two situations side by side quickly realized the contrast was not merely sharp, it was overwhelming. Camilla's troubles had always been rooted in public perception. Her scandal was emotional, personal, and deeply tied to the dynamics of the Wales marriage. It shook public opinion, damaged the monarchy's image, and forced years of careful public relations, rehabilitation. But even in the most turbulent moments, Camilla's situation never threatened the internal structure of the institution. It was a reputational crisis, painful, yes, but ultimately containable. Meghan's case, by contrast, reaches far beyond image. Palace officials now speak of her actions as a form of institutional betrayal, a deliberate manipulation of financial systems, a calculated effort to obscure money flows, and a pattern of behavior that intersected with legal, constitutional, and security concerns. Where Camilla's scandal was emotional, Meghan's is systemic. Where Camilla's crisis required narrative repair, Meghan's demands forensic investigation. The threat level reflects this difference. Camilla never placed the monarchy in legal jeopardy. Her controversy was categorized internally as a medium-level reputational challenge. Meghan's, however, is classified as the highest risk scenario the palace has confronted in decades. A complex mesh of offshore transfers, confidential information leaks, and structural manipulation that touches on parliamentary oversight and Crown accountability. As a result, the royal responses diverged dramatically. Camilla's integration into the monarchy followed a long, carefully managed path of public acceptance and institutional support. Meghan, by contrast, faces a crown that has executed a full-scale investigation, initiated disciplinary measures, and stripped her titles, actions reserved only for situations in which the institution itself is endangered. Put simply, Camilla's scandal challenged the monarchy's heart. Meghan challenges its foundations. And that difference, palace advisors say, is why the Crown's reaction today is so uncompromising. The message was unmistakable. Meghan's actions jeopardized the monarchy in ways no modern royal has done. On 10 December, King Charles convened a private council with Anne, William, the Lord Chamberlain, and the Master of the Privy Purse. His tone was somber but resolute. The evidence, he said, left no room for alternative interpretation. He stressed that the monarchy survives only when it adheres to standards higher than those imposed by law. His statement was both constitutional and moral, a reaffirmation of the Crown's guiding principles. It was also a clear signal to the world that the king stood unwaveringly behind Anne's leadership. After the meeting, Charles approved the preparation of a formal institutional report summarizing the investigation's findings. Though not yet public, insiders described the document as devastating in clarity and irrefutable in detail. Later that evening, Anne authorized a direct message to be conveyed to senior Commonwealth representatives. In it, she reaffirmed the Crown's commitment to transparency and ethical governance. The final sentence, written in her own hand, read, "Misconduct will never find sanctuary within the House of Windsor. Thank you, sit rise in thanking God." The statement circulated privately, but swiftly reached diplomatic circles. It was a line that resonated globally and established Anne as the moral anchor of the monarchy in its most turbulent month. As the details of the investigation, though not yet the full documents, began to surface through reputable British outlets, public sentiment shifted firmly against Meghan. Polls conducted on 11 December showed 72% of Britons support the removal of her remaining royal associations. 61% view the offshore accounts as intentional wrongdoing. 54% believe Harry should face consequences if he was knowingly compliant. Meanwhile, Meghan's typically vocal PR allies fell silent. Hollywood sources reported unease at her diminishing credibility. Anne's inquiry had not only exposed financial misconduct, it had restored a rare sense of unity within the monarchy. Meghan, once positioned as a modernizing force, now stood isolated, discredited, and overshadowed by the institution she attempted to outmaneuver. By mid-afternoon on 11 December, the atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace had changed. What had begun as a meticulous audit had transformed into a moment of institutional determination, a point at which the monarchy no longer felt threatened by the scandal, but instead fully prepared to confront it. Senior aides began referring to this phase simply as the turning point. Princess Anne, standing at the center of the storm, made the shift unmistakable. Following a closed-door session with Crown Legal Counsel, she issued instructions for a consolidated dossier to be prepared, one that could be presented to Parliament if necessary. It was a signal the palace rarely deploys, an indication that the Crown was ready to involve governmental oversight should Meghan attempt to challenge or obscure the findings. Anne's tone was resolute. If we must answer publicly, we will answer with facts. If we must defend the Crown, we will defend it with evidence. Her words, according to one official present, left no room for hesitation. Meanwhile, Prince William began stepping into a more visible leadership role. Though still maintaining outward calm, he held multiple internal briefings with communications staff, preparing for the public fallout that would inevitably follow once the investigation's conclusions were finalized. Aides described him as controlled analytical, and deeply protective of the monarchy's long-term credibility. William made it clear that this scandal would define how future generations view the early years of King Charles's reign and his own transition to kingship. "If we allow misconduct to sit unchallenged, we rewrite what it means to serve," he told a senior advisor. King Charles, though physically removed from some of the most intense investigative work, shaped the moral trajectory of the response. Late on 11 December, the king delivered a private statement to his senior council, affirming the central principle guiding the crown. The monarchy endures when it holds itself to standards higher than those imposed upon it. It more stengers. This line, echoing the sentiment he expressed earlier in the month, strengthened the palace's internal unity and ensured every department, from finance to communications to constitutional affairs, was aligned. Across the Atlantic, Meghan's position had deteriorated dramatically. The silence from her team was no longer interpreted as strategic, it was seen as defensive paralysis. Leaks from California suggested growing unrest among her advisors, some of whom feared that responding too aggressively could trigger a demand from the Crown for disclosure of private documents. Others urged a counterattack to reframe the narrative, but even they admitted that the evidence emerging from London was far stronger than anticipated. Harry, caught in the middle, found himself increasingly sidelined. His earlier impulsive defense of Meghan now appeared out of sync with the severity of the findings. According to sources close to him, he had begun asking legal questions he once insisted were unnecessary questions about liability, about asset protections, about marital exposure, about whether he could be compelled to testify should parliamentary action be initiated. Inside British media circles, analysts noted a significant shift. The scandal was no longer centered on Meghan's behavior, but on the institution's unwavering response. It was the Crown, not the controversy, that now dominated headlines. By the end of the day, one message was clear: the monarchy had regained the initiative. Meghan Markle's defense was weakening by the hour, and Princess Anne, backed by Charles and William, had moved from investigation to enforcement, setting the stage for the final confrontation. By the morning of 12 December, as dawn settled over Buckingham Palace, it became clear that the investigation had reached its endpoint, not because the facts were exhausted, but because the Crown had gathered everything it needed to act. Princess Anne, the unrelenting architect of the inquiry, convened what palace sources now describe as the final consolidation meeting. It was brief, decisive, and historic. Margaret Hartley presented the concluding audit summary, a coherent, meticulously mapped account of offshore transfers, concealed earnings, information for payment exchanges, and deliberate circumvention of royal financial protocols. The document left no ambiguity. The patterns were intentional. The structures were built to hide and deflect. And the beneficiary was unquestionably tied to Meghan Markle. Anne's reaction was characteristically blunt. "We protect our own by protecting the institution first, and the Crown has now spoken." Her words set the tone for the hours that followed. Shortly before noon, King Charles approved a set of internal directives designed to finalize the impact of Meghan's misconduct. Though not all measures will be publicly disclosed, palace officials confirm that Meghan will no longer be entitled to any privileges associated with former working royals. Her financial dealings related to her time in the royal household will be subject to ongoing Crown oversight. Legal avenues remain open should the Crown determine that breaches rise to the level of parliamentary concern. Charles's written statement to his Privy Council emphasized accountability, dignity, and continuity. "We act not from anger, but from duty," he wrote. "The stability of the monarchy depends on transparency and truth qualities which cannot be compromised. E.g., this well-risked times, the emotional center of the crisis remains Prince Harry, whose position grows more precarious by the hour. Having learned that most of the legal exposure falls upon him, not Meghan, Harry has reportedly begun cooperating with external advisors, though still out of public view. His silence is no longer defiance, it is calculation." Privately, aides say Harry now fears 3 outcomes: financial eradication if asset disputes escalate, institutional severance if he continues to defend Meghan, public humiliation should documents implicating him indirectly be released. One advisor described him as a man staring at the wreckage of choices he thought were made in love. His transformation from certainty to hesitation has captivated the public. Social sentiment has shifted from anger to a kind of reluctant sympathy. Harry looks less like an accomplice and more like collateral damage in Meghan's elaborate financial architecture. In California, Meghan's inner circle has thinned dramatically. Media allies who once defended her unconditionally have gone silent. Entertainment partners have paused collaborations, citing reputational risk. Her PR team is fractured, unable to craft a narrative powerful enough to counter the weight of official Crown documentation. A senior royal historian said it best. When Camilla faced scandal, the monarchy bent but did not break. Meghan's scandal did not bend the monarchy, it strengthened it. Late in the afternoon, Princess Anne issued the final statement of the investigation. Short, austere, unmistakable. This review concludes with the certainty that no individual stands above the integrity of the Crown. Our commitment to service endures, as it has for 1,000 years. Her words were not aimed at Meghan, they were aimed at the world. As the palace settles into a rare evening calm, one truth stands firm. The House of Windsor emerges stronger, more united, and more disciplined than it has been in decades. Meghan Markle stands isolated, her defences eroded. Harry remains suspended between loyalty and survival, his next move looming over global headlines. And Princess Anne, quiet, relentless, immovable, has redefined what royal accountability looks like in the modern age. The scandal has ended. The consequences have not. There will be no ambiguity. The inheritance of the House of Windsor now rests solely with those who serve it. King Charles III, official statement, the 13th of December 2025. On a cold December morning in Windsor Castle, beneath the chandeliers of the Crimson Drawing Room, King Charles III delivered what may be remembered as the most consequential declaration of his reign. With a single speech, he closed the door on years of speculation, emotional unrest, and legal grey zones surrounding Prince Harry's lineage and his children standing within the monarchy. The timing was deliberate, the moment was sharp, the impact? Immediate and irrevocable. At precisely 10 a.m. GMT, in front of a full assembly of senior royal family members, palace officials, and constitutional advisors, Charles confirmed the discovery of a hidden clause in Queen Elizabeth II's private will, a clause which had been intended as a last-ditch bridge to mend the fractured bond between the Crown and Prince Harry's branch of the family. Instead, it became the basis for a final reckoning, a clause that changed everything. The clause, handwritten by Queen Elizabeth II on the 15th of March 2022, just 6 months before her death, set aside £20 million from her private estate. But it did not bequeath those funds unconditionally. Instead, it came with 3 specific requirements tied to Harry and his children. Prince Harry must reside in the UK or a Commonwealth country for at least 90 days each year, contributing to public service, charitable efforts, or legacy work. £5 million was to be earmarked for Archie and Lilibet, but only through trusts approved by both Harry and the reigning monarch, meaning Charles himself. The children must spend meaningful time in Britain as they grow, to maintain a cultural and familial connection to the Crown. In a private letter attached to the clause, Elizabeth described this as her final effort to safeguard the continuity of the family, not just by blood, but by tradition and duty. Charles, sources confirm, read the letter in silence twice. Then he closed it and summoned the Privy Council. From Dingon to Decree, a new succession doctrine. In his address this morning, Charles paid tribute to the wisdom and grace of his late mother, but made clear that the circumstances she hoped for no longer exist. My mother, in her infinite love, believed that bonds might heal. But in the years since her passing, that hope has faded beneath a pattern of division, exploitation, and disrespect. The crown cannot be held hostage by nostalgia. Effective immediately, Charles announced a formal and binding clarification of the royal inheritance framework, transforming what had long been an unspoken code into a codified constitutional statute. Under this new framework, officially named the Sovereign Succession and Legacy Preservation Act, SSLPA 2025, the monarchy distinguishes between royal succession, direct heirs engaged in duties residing within UK, Commonwealth, for example, Prince William, Prince George, legacy trusteeship, those charged with protecting palaces, archives, cultural heritage, for example, Princess Anne, Lady Louise Windsor. Symbolic title holders may receive honorary titles, but no estate rights or trust authority. For example, Beatrice, Eugenie, excluded by choice, voluntarily renounced roles or rejected UK residence and service. For example, Prince Harry, Archie, Lilibet. Inheritance in this family is not simply about blood, Charles continued. It is about stewardship. It is about sacrifice. It is about trust. The end of ambiguity. For Harry and Meghan's children, the implications are stark. Though born with royal blood, they will no longer receive estate-based inheritance and will not be considered in the future line of cultural or custodial legacy unless they return to the UK and engage with the Crown under terms yet to be defined, which now seems improbable. Charles's decision was not made lightly. It follows nearly 4 years of public turbulence, including Harry's explosive memoir Spare, the Netflix docuseries Harry and Meghan, and ongoing legal disputes regarding taxpayer-funded security and property access. According to a palace aide, Charles met with William, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Duchess Sophie 2 nights before the announcement. Meghan and Harry were not contacted. They have had every chance to return. Every road leads home until the gates are closed, said one insider. This time, Charles closed the gates. The illusion of wealth versus reality of inheritance. The King's speech also dismantled a popular myth that royal inheritance is about vast sums of cash handed to family members. Instead, Charles explained, true inheritance in the monarchy involves stewardship of royal properties, for example, Balmoral, Windsor, Sandringham, guardianship of historical artifacts and state documents, public duties tied to Commonwealth leadership and soft diplomacy, maintenance of charitable legacies under the Royal Foundation. It is a life of service, not luxury, Charles said. We do not inherit power, we inherit the duty to preserve what we did not build and must never destroy. Why December 13 matters. The timing of the statement 2 weeks before Christmas was not coincidental. This year's Sandringham gathering will be the first, with Princess Catherine officially returned to public life after her health battle, and the last before King Charles's 78th birthday. It will also be the first Christmas where, for the first time in modern royal memory, no invitation will be extended to Prince Harry and his family. The document that set off a constitutional chain reaction within the House of Windsor did not arrive alone. Tucked carefully behind the legally binding clause in Queen Elizabeth II's private will was a letter. It was handwritten, folded twice, and sealed with the monarch's personal wax insignia, not the sovereign seal of state, but the smaller, more intimate crest, used only for family correspondence. It was addressed simply, to Charles, upon the reading of the clause, Mummy. No aides were present when the king opened it. Only silence, the sound of pages unfolding, and according to one source close to the palace, the long, steady breath of a son preparing to hear from his mother one last time. And what he read was not a command, but a plea. You must do what is right for the crown, my dear Charles, but I ask you to remember, family, however broken, is not so easily dismissed as Parliament votes or public favour. It is flesh, blood, and hope. T. Queen Elizabeth II, private letter, March 2022. Queen Elizabeth knew her time was short, By the time she penned the note in early 2022, her health had begun to visibly decline. Those close to her said she spent increasing hours in the oak room at Windsor Castle, reflecting, praying, and crucially writing. She had weathered decades of political crises, Commonwealth challenges, and tabloid storms. But it was the familial rupture with Harry that she saw as her deepest unfinished business. In the letter, she acknowledged the damage done by Harry, by the institution, and even, perhaps, by her own hands. He has hurt us, but he is also hurting. That is clear to me now, and I fear what this rift will do to his children. I do not wish for Archie and Lilibet to grow up with only echoes of who we are. She went on to outline her motivations for creating the conditional inheritance clause, not to coerce, not to bribe, but to offer a structured invitation for reconnection. She made clear she did not expect compliance, but hoped it would at least create a point of contact when she could no longer intervene. Bridges once burned can sometimes be rebuilt, but someone must gather the wood, the stone, the mortar. This is my attempt to leave you the materials. The tone, say insiders, moved Charles deeply, but it also placed him in an impossible position: uphold a mother's final hope or protect the monarchy from further risk. After reading the letter, Charles reportedly remained silent for several minutes. He then summoned 3 of his closest constitutional advisers, including the Lord Chamberlain and the Keeper of the Privy Purse. His instruction was calm but absolute. This letter must be preserved, but its terms will not dictate the direction of the crown. This was not a rejection of Elizabeth's memory. It was, in Charles's view, the fulfillment of her highest priority, the survival and integrity of the monarchy itself. Though her letter was full of personal emotion, it lacked the institutional realism Charles felt was now essential. She wrote as a mother, one aide explained, but Charles had to respond as king. That distinction, subtle but final, shaped the next step: a closed-door meeting with senior royals to announce his intentions. The meeting took place the night before Charles's public address, within the Balmoral Room at Buckingham Palace. Present were William and Catherine, Princess Anne, Prince Edward and Sophie, and 2 senior legal officers. Notably absent were Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, who were informed separately. According to multiple palace sources, Charles read aloud a portion of his mother's letter, visibly moved but unwavering in tone. Then came his defining statement: "There will be no further negotiations with Harry. The inheritance clause is acknowledged, the letter is honoured, but the future of Windsor lies not with sentiment, but with service." No objections were raised. Even those with lingering sympathy for Harry reportedly agreed that too many opportunities had passed, and that further delays or concessions would risk damaging the institution's public integrity. With the Queen's letter now placed in the royal archives alongside her other private writings, its contents remain a powerful reminder of what could have been and what was ultimately lost. Charles, while honouring the document, chose a harder path, one that prioritizes legacy over lineage, action over affection. And in doing so, he drew a sharp line between family love and royal obligation, defining once and for all who belongs to the crown and who has left it behind. In the hours following King Charles's unprecedented declaration, the gilded halls of Windsor fell into a respectful hush, but across the Atlantic, a very different kind of silence took hold. There was no public statement from Prince Harry, no social media post, no video message, not even a carefully worded line from the Archewell Foundation. What emerged instead was a calculated, eerie stillness from Montecito, the palatial California estate Harry and Meghan have called home since 2020. And for royal watchers, that silence said everything. According to 2 independent sources with knowledge of the Sussex household, Harry was informed of King Charles's announcement via official legal dispatch, delivered to his legal team within hours of the public broadcast on December 13. The envelope contained a formal acknowledgement of Queen Elizabeth II's private clause, a legal record of King Charles's response and final ruling, a written statement of exclusion regarding inheritance and succession, and a closing line offering archival access to the Queen's personal letter but no invitation for negotiation. By royal standards, this was as clear-cut and as final as a declaration could be. Insiders in Los Angeles media circles report that Meghan was shaken but unsurprised. One producer familiar with her Netflix development projects described her mood as calm, yet furious beneath the surface. She had warned Harry, the producer reportedly said. She always believed they'd be frozen out, eventually, but not like this, not this, coldly. End quote. As for Harry, those closest to him say he was not angry, not tearful, just still. "It's not the money," said one Montecito neighbor. "It's being erased. That's what broke him." For the first time in modern royal history, 2 children born of direct royal blood have been publicly named and removed from future inheritance and legacy responsibilities. At the heart of the Queen's now-rejected clause was a provision allocating £5 million for Archie and Lilibet, managed by Crown-approved trustees, and contingent upon the children spending meaningful time in the UK. By declining to enact this clause, King Charles has revoked trust-based financial assets tied to the Crown, removed formal expectations or roles for the Sussex children in any future royal duties, eliminated any royal obligations regarding their education, security, or travel access in the UK. And with that, a generational link was severed. It is important to note, this decision does not affect their titles. While Charles has the constitutional right to restrict access to inheritance and privileges, Archie and Lilibet retain their prince and princess designations under the 1,917 letters patent, at least for now, but the symbolic message is clear. They will not inherit property, responsibility, or place in the working royal structure unless a dramatic reversal occurs, something no one in Buckingham Palace considers likely. The British press was quick to react, with headlines ranging from "Charles draws the line, The Times," to "Crown cuts California off." The Daily Telegraph. Meanwhile, US outlets took a more emotional tone. CNN featured the segment, "The Grandchildren Erased," while the New York Times published a lengthy op-ed titled, "Legacy or Leverage? The Windsors and the Weight of Conditional Love." A pizza with Tekji's. International response reflected the global divide. Australian commentators largely praised Charles's firmness. Canadian outlets were mixed, torn between monarchy loyalty and concern for the children. US audiences, especially younger viewers, leaned heavily in Harry and Meghan's favour, with trending hashtags like #NotMyKing and #ProtectArchie, and Lilibet dominating X, formerly Twitter. Back in the UK, however, support for the king remained surprisingly robust. According to a snap poll by YouGov conducted within 12 hours of the announcement, 64% of British respondents supported Charles's move to clarify inheritance rights. 71% agreed that Harry had removed himself from royal duty and legacy. Only 19% believed Archie and Lilibet should receive inheritance without condition. As one former royal communications officer put it bluntly, "The public doesn't hate Harry, they're just exhausted by him, and they're done waiting for him to come home." End quote. Within Windsor and Sandringham, the mood was not triumphant, but resolved. According to palace insiders, Princess Anne was the first to stand and speak after Charles's closed-door speech the night before the announcement. Her words were brief and characteristic. "Then let's stop entertaining fiction and get on with it." Prince William reportedly nodded, his only reply, "We've already given too much." It was a caser. Catherine, who had only recently returned to active duties following her year of illness, did not speak during the meeting. But when leaving the room, she was heard saying softly to a staffer, "I hope the children won't grow up thinking we didn't try." It was a rare moment of compassion, but not a contradiction. While there's been no official response from Harry or Meghan, sources suggest multiple options are being considered. A televised interview in early 2026 Oprah's name has resurfaced. A written rebuttal through RQL, framed as a personal, family letter to the public, or complete silence to reclaim moral high ground through dignified distance. None of these choices, however, can reverse the fact that the formal channels of the Crown are now closed to their children. They are no longer expected, considered, or prepared for roles in the UK. They are by every official measure private citizens of a new world, separated not just by ocean, but by history. The royal household has long been shrouded in tradition, ceremony, and unwritten codes. But with King Charles's sweeping declaration on the 13th of December 2025, a veil has been lifted. For the first time in recent history, the monarchy has released a clearly defined framework outlining who will inherit not only titles, but stewardship, properties, and cultural obligations linked to the British Crown. What many assume to be a private, automatic process guided by birthright and proximity has now been exposed as something far more structured, strategic, and conditional. This is not just about who wears the crown, this is about who carries the burden of legacy. As part of the Sovereign Succession and Legacy Preservation Act, SSLPA 2025, King Charles and the Privy Council have formally categorized the royal heirs into distinct tiers. Each tier defines the nature of inheritance, from sovereign rule to legacy oversight to ceremonial status with no custodial authority. This decision, while partly triggered by the rejection of Queen Elizabeth II's secret inheritance clause for Prince Harry's children, has now expanded into a full institutional blueprint. It signals a new era, one where royal inheritance is earned, not merely assumed. The Crown succession line. Those who will rule. Prince William, Prince of Wales. Role. Heir apparent. Inheritance. Full sovereign authority upon the passing or abdication of King Charles. Assets. Authority over state residences, military appointments, and constitutional powers under the monarchy. Prince George of Wales. Role. Second in line to the throne. Inheritance. Prepared as future sovereign, will begin formal constitutional education by age 12. Assets. Non-executive symbolic trust attached to Sandringham estate for future stewardship. Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis. Role. Working royal heirs with projected public-facing duties. Inheritance. Lifetime stewardship roles, potential dukedoms conferred upon marriage. Assets. Inclusion in future Commonwealth tours and heritage preservation projects. Legacy guardians, those who protect history, estates, and tradition. Princess Anne, the Princess Royal. Role. Custodian of military regalia, equestrian traditions, and royal ceremonial protocol. Inheritance. Oversight of select royal charities and the royal collection. Trust, non-commercial wing. Symbolic assets. The Royal Ascot Legacy. Garter Day traditions. Zara Tyndall and Peter Phillips, children of Anne. Role. Non-working royals, but designated honorary trustees. Inheritance. None in terms of titles, but granted co-guardianship of royal sporting events and bloodline archives. Notes. Encouraged to preserve equine and Olympic-linked royal history. Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh. Role. Heritage custodian and transition overseer for future generations. Inheritance. Continued stewardship of Duke of Edinburgh awards and estate-linked education programs. Assets. Non-residential trust rights in Balmoral-based youth camps. Lady Louise Windsor and James, Earl of Wessex. Role. Elevated legacy participants. Inheritance. Cultural custodian rights to royal libraries and digital archives. Assets. Co-custody over preservation of Windsor Castle's educational initiatives. Title bearers with no legacy rights. Symbolic royal presence. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Role. Retain princess status, but excluded from trust, property, or sovereign inheritance. Inheritance. None. Permitted ceremonial presence at specific national events. Notes. Children not granted HRH status, nor included in succession management structures. Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, Archie, and Lilibet. Role. formally removed from legacy inheritance, not included in royal custodial structure. Inheritance, nullified due to non-compliance with Queen Elizabeth II's 2022 private clause. Notes: titles currently retained under letters patent but under review, security access permanently revoked. Prince Andrew. Role: fully stripped of inheritance rights and ceremonial roles. Inheritance: none, removed from Royal Lodge Property Trust and military patronage. Notes: future engagement limited to private, family events only. One of the most significant revelations from the 2025 Act is the distinction between inheritance and possession. Contrary to popular belief, members of the royal family do not own their estates in the traditional sense. Sandringham, Balmoral, and Windsor are held in custodial trust, meant to be preserved, not liquidated or personalised. The Act reinforces that inheritance in the royal context refers to authority to maintain and preserve royal properties, the duty to protect historical and ceremonial continuity, the responsibility to uphold royal patronages and community programs, engagement in the long-term representation of Britain's constitutional monarchy. It is, as King Charles put it, a life of service, not one of self-service. End quote. The Royal Foundation has been restructured to allow William and Catherine full oversight, with Charlotte and Louis granted future observer status. The Sovereign Grant Report for 2026 will include a full appendix on inheritance roles and funding distribution. Clarence House will become the official residence of the Wales family upon Charles's passing. The Balmoral Archive and Personal Library will be split between Anne's line and George's future custodianship team. The consequences of this clarification are immense. For the first time, the monarchy is publicly setting expectations, not just for those who serve, but for those who assume their surname grants them entitlement. It reinforces a broader message from King Charles that the monarchy will not allow emotional chaos, media warfare, or internal dissent to threaten its institutional survival. This document does more than define inheritance. It draws a generational map for the Crown's future. The monarchy may be forged in tradition, but its survival depends on public consent. And as King Charles's sweeping succession reforms echo across the United Kingdom and beyond, the British public finds itself at a crossroads, faced with the most significant redefinition of royal inheritance in modern memory. Gone are the days of vague assumptions and ceremonial ambiguity. With his December 13 declaration and the subsequent release of the Sovereign Succession and Legacy Preservation Act 2025, Charles has transformed royal inheritance from a birthright into a framework of earned responsibility. But how has the public responded? A recent YouGov poll conducted within 72 hours of the announcement revealed a nation both surprised and, in many ways, relieved. After years of royal turmoil marked by Harry and Meghan's departure, Prince Andrew's disgrace, and shifting public duties, the people of Britain were eager for clarity. According to the poll, 67% of respondents supported King Charles's decision to exclude Harry and his children from inheritance. 58% believed that inheritance should be linked to service and public duty, not just lineage. 71% approved of William and Catherine as the future face of the monarchy. Only 22% thought Meghan and Harry should be given one more chance. These figures suggest a remarkable shift in public sentiment. While initial reactions to Harry and Meghan's departure in 2020 were divided, years of interviews, media appearances, and legal disputes have eroded public sympathy. The perception now is less about betrayal and more about boundaries. One citizen interviewed outside Kensington Palace expressed it this way: "They left. That's fine. But you can't walk away from the family business and expect to still get a paycheck and the company name." Media coverage reflected this tone. The Daily Telegraph praised Charles for bringing institutional clarity, while The Guardian acknowledged the emotional weight of the decision, but noted that familial sadness cannot override constitutional duty. Even the said Mirror, often sympathetic to the Sussexes, ran the headline, Monarchy moves on. Meanwhile, international reaction, especially in the United States, has been far more polarized. American networks ran segments questioning the harshness of Charles's stance. CNN and MSNBC highlighted the clause about Archie and Lilibet as cold, while The View hosted an emotional discussion titled, "Do Royal Children Deserve to be Punished for Their Parents' Choices?" Still, British media pundits pushed back. "This isn't punishment," wrote one commentator in The Times. "It's structured. It's monarchy adapting to the reality of a modern, global media environment. And for the first time in years, the public sees a royal family that isn't just reacting, but leading." Oh! On social media, the discourse was as fiery as ever. Trending UK hashtags included number Windsor line defined, number William and Catherine, and number legacy not lineage. In contrast, US hashtags included number Sussex silenced and number justice for Archie. But in Britain, beyond the media and politics, the emotional impact of the announcement landed most deeply with older generations. For many who had lived through Queen Elizabeth II's reign, the idea of the monarchy as an enduring institution above scandal and beyond trend was finally reaffirmed. Pensioner groups and veteran associations released statements of support. Historical societies lauded the act as a clarifying moment that reinforced the difference between celebrity and monarchy. And religious leaders, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, quietly endorsed Charles's intent to preserve the sacred structure of royal stewardship. Among younger Britons, reaction was more nuanced but not hostile. University surveys indicated that while many Gen Z and millennial respondents were indifferent to royal politics, they appreciated the transparency. As one student at Durham University said, "At least now we know who's actually in and who's out. No more pretending." Instead, the Saaf Sumba the state. For the monarchy, this matters. Because for decades, survival depended not just on maintaining relevance, but on maintaining mystique. Now, Charles's legacy may be built not on mystery, but on management. Observers noted that the public's relatively calm reaction stands in contrast to the firestorms that followed earlier royal events, from Diana's funeral to the Oprah interview. One reason may be the measured institutional tone Charles used. There was no bitterness, no personal attack, just structure, and that tone seems to have resonated. As Britain prepares for the 2025 Christmas broadcast, where King Charles is expected to reflect on the state of the nation, his family, and the future, there is a growing sense that the monarchy, once again, has turned a page. For the first time in years, there is no uncertainty about the line of inheritance. There is no ambiguity about who carries the royal torch. What remains now is whether the people, particularly future generations, will see the value in what's been clarified. As the dust settles from one of the most defining moments of King Charles III's reign, a new vision of the monarchy has begun to quietly take shape. No longer obscured by the drama of family estrangement or the ambiguity of outdated customs, the House of Windsor is recalibrating around a single core value: duty. The exclusion of Prince Harry and his children from royal inheritance, while deeply personal, was only part of a broader transformation. In its wake, the senior royals Charles, William, Catherine, Anne, and Edward have stepped forward not in defiance, but in focus. This is the monarchy as institution, not dynasty, and what remains after the noise is purpose. Inside Buckingham Palace, aides speak of a renewed sense of alignment. The Sovereign Succession and Legacy Preservation Act 2025 may have made headlines for what it ended, but within the royal corridors, its true legacy is what it has begun. A new structure, a new clarity, a return to the concept that royalty exists not to be served but to serve. For King Charles, this moment is more than a legal milestone. It is the consolidation of a lifetime of preparation. At 77, and after a year marked by his own health struggles, Charles is no longer the prince in waiting. He is a monarch with limited time and unlimited responsibility. His focus, according to those closest to him, is now singular: securing the next generation's legitimacy not through sentiment but through institutional coherence. In that mission, he has found a formidable partner in Prince William. As the Prince of Wales, William has grown into his role with a blend of quiet resolve and modern sensibility. Gone is the tension of early adulthood. In its place is a confident statesman focused on education, climate, veterans' welfare, and youth initiatives. William has assumed full executive oversight of the Royal Foundation and is said to be closely involved in the reallocation of legacy trusts tied to Crown patronages. Princess Catherine, recently returned to public life after a year of medical treatment, has been described by insiders as the symbol of enduring grace. Her public appearances since her recovery have drawn record-breaking crowds, particularly during her visit to Birmingham in late November, where she opened a new children's oncology wing. Charles, in a private conversation captured by a hot mic during a royal engagement, was overheard saying to a staffer, "She carries it better than any of us ever could." That remark, simple but revealing, highlights a key shift in the monarchy's power dynamic. Catherine is no longer simply consort in waiting. She is emerging as the emotional heart of the modern crown. Elsewhere, Princess Anne continues to play the role of institutional enforcer. Her oversight of the Armed Forces ceremonial calendar, her stewardship of the royal archives, and her consistent engagement with over 300 charities make her, in many ways, the monarchy's backbone. Prince Edward and Duchess Sophie have also stepped into firmer positions, particularly following their reassignment to manage educational trusts previously held by the Queen and Prince Philip. Their children, Lady Louise and James, Earl of Wessex, are being quietly trained in archival management and public engagement. There is no spectacle here, only service. The palace's internal messaging has changed too. Where once royal strategy was built around visibility, it is now built around continuity. The message is clear. Monarchy is not a reaction to media, it is a safeguard of heritage. In a private strategy meeting at Windsor in early December, a senior courtier reportedly summarized the new mood. "No more chasing headlines. We're preserving the institution, not performing for it." Sit. That sentiment was reflected in Charles's official Christmas broadcast, pre-recorded on December 20 and set to air on the 25th. In it, he speaks not of family disputes or personal challenges, but of unity, purpose, and the quiet power of duty. He praises the work of young nurses, military volunteers, and teachers, and concludes with a simple phrase: "The crown endures because its people believe in what it protects." Perhaps most remarkably, this new Windsor doesn't seek to erase the past. The tensions with Harry, the scrutiny of Andrew, the painful silences around Diana, all of it remains part of the royal story. But it is no longer the centre of it. Instead, the future belongs to those still within the circle, to William, George, and the siblings who will stand beside them, to Anne, Edward, and Louise, keepers of culture and continuity, to Catherine, quietly rising as the most beloved royal of her generation, and to a king who, after decades in the shadow of his mother, has now carved a legacy of his own, not through charisma or drama, but through resolve. The House of Windsor has been tested, and for now, at least, it has chosen not chaos, but clarity. It has reforged itself in silence, and in that silence, something stronger has begun. We do not pass titles by illusion, we do not crown fiction, and we do not protect deception. The crown is not a stage, and we are not its actors. The Duchess of Edinburgh, official statement from Windsor, the 12th of December 2025. At precisely 9:04 a.m. On a frost-bitten Thursday morning, the silence that had engulfed the British royal family was broken not by King Charles, nor by Prince William or Princess Catherine, but by the woman long considered the monarchy's quiet spine, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. Stepping into the symbolic breach left by Catherine's public absence due to her commitment to the Together at Christmas royal concert and charity schedule, Sophie delivered a rare and unsparing statement from the crimson drawing room of Windsor Castle. The timing was no accident. The tone was unmistakable. And the message was final. The royal family was drawing a red line around its legacy, its lineage, and its laws. What had once been a speculative whisper, a fringe theory clung to by tabloid obsessives had, in a matter of days, metastasized into an institutional reckoning, with the woman known only as DL preparing to go public with what she claims is proof that she, not Meghan Markle, gave birth to both Archie and Lilibet. The Crown was now forced to confront a scenario with constitutional implications. At the center of it all, a royal couple in self-imposed exile, a nation obsessed with succession, and an institution built on centuries of traceable bloodlines. But what made Sophie's intervention extraordinary was not just what she said, but how she said it. For years, Sophie, the former PR executive turned Duchess, had embraced a support role within the firm. Steady, unshowy, and fiercely loyal, she was often the one sent on delicate assignments where discretion trumped glamour. But today, she was not quiet. In her brief address, recorded and distributed within 30 minutes to all major networks, she made no mention of Meghan Markle by name, nor did she use the word surrogacy. But the context was clear as glass. The titles and honors extended to the next generation are not decorative heirlooms passed on for sentiment. They are constitutional markers of responsibility, lineage, and public trust. Any disruption to their foundation is not a private matter, it is a threat to the constitutional integrity of this nation. It was the firmest line drawn since the 2020 Megxit fallout. But this time, no olive branch was offered. This was not the family attempting to manage public relations. This was the Crown, asserting the rules of its own survival. As many noted, Princess Catherine, the royal family's modern icon of steadiness, was not the one to make the statement. Sources confirm she is currently in final rehearsals for the Together at Christmas concert at Westminster Abbey, where she is expected to host war widows, refugee children, and NHS frontline workers in a high-profile event to be broadcast on Christmas Eve. The decision not to engage in the scandal publicly is, according to insiders, not avoidance but prioritization. Catherine has taken on the symbolic heart of the monarchy this December, said one palace aide. But when it comes to matters of protocol, bloodline, and succession, Sophie's statement is the law speaking, not the sentiment. And it's true for all of Catherine's popularity, Sophie carries a quiet authority. As the wife of Prince Edward and the only daughter-in-law personally mentored by Queen Elizabeth II, Sophie's role has always been rooted in institutional memory. It is no coincidence that she, not Charles or William, was the one chosen to deliver this warning to Harry and Meghan and to the world. In private, Prince Harry has been described by several palace contacts as restless and increasingly erratic. Sources close to the family claim he has reached out through intermediaries in the past 72 hours, attempting to explain the surrogacy situation before DL's potential televised interview airs. But here's where it becomes complicated and deeply psychological. Harry is not trying to save Meghan, one insider told us. He's trying to save the children's titles. The only negotiation he's attempting is not about public reconciliation. It's about retaining their royal legitimacy, because if that collapses, so does his children's connection to royal power. That nuance is key. Harry, once the insurgent royal who claimed he wanted nothing to do with the monarchy, is now reportedly desperate to preserve the royal status of Archie and Lilibet, even if that means re-engaging with the very system he once rejected. He's playing both sides, denouncing the institution in media narratives while lobbying it privately for favors. According to sources, his approach in recent days has been cautious but transactional. A quiet offer to relocate to Windsor for a reset, a willingness to distance himself from press activity, even a rumored formal letter sent to Charles offering total media withdrawal in exchange for guarantees that Archie and Lilibet's titles will remain untouched. As of now, there has been no reply from the monarch, but Sophie's statement speaks volumes. Unlike Harry, Meghan Markle has gone dark. No social posts, no public appearances, No podcast teasers. Hollywood insiders say projects once attached to her name, including a planned Netflix docuseries on motherhood, are being paused indefinitely. The Duchess of Sussex has always been deliberate with image-making, but this silence, according to those who once worked with her, is not strategy, it's survival. She doesn't have a playbook for this, said a former Archewell consultant. She's not fighting the narrative right now because she doesn't have control of it. And she knows that once evidence surfaces, spin doesn't matter anymore. Meghan's psychological profile, as described by multiple former staffers, is centered around narrative construction, a deep need to frame, contextualize, and emotionally justify her decisions. The surrogacy cover-up, if true, was never about deceit in the malicious sense, they argue. It was about control, presentation, and protection, both of image and influence. But control, once broken, is difficult to reassert, especially when the monarchy itself begins to mobilize. What makes this moment different from previous Sussex scandals is its institutional nature. The monarchy has endured documentaries, books, tell-all interviews, and viral social movements. But none of those challenged the bloodline. Now, the Crown faces a direct assault on the integrity of succession, a legal and constitutional issue, not a PR one. If Archie and Lilibet were not born of the woman listed on official records, then succession becomes a question of fraud, not freedom, said Lord Alton, a constitutional historian at Oxford. And fraud, even in royalty, is not negotiable. The stakes are not emotional, they are existential. And that's why Sophie spoke. As the Queen once said, "The crown must endure." And today, it is speaking in a voice that rarely rises one of law, consequence, and preservation. As the Duchess of Edinburgh's statement reverberated through media channels, a different kind of tension began brewing across the Thames this time, in Parliament. Though the British monarchy operates as a constitutional institution removed from daily political affairs, matters of succession, legality, and title legitimacy fall squarely under parliamentary oversight when public trust is at stake. And this, as one MP described it bluntly, is no longer a palace family drama. This is now a national legal grey zone. By midday on December 12, just hours after Sophie's broadcast, 3 separate Conservative and Labour MPs had filed formal questions to the Privy Council regarding the verification process for royal births, especially in cases involving assisted reproductive methods or international birth records. The tone wasn't accusatory. It was cautious but unmistakably alert. One particularly notable voice came from MP Harriet Norrington, a staunch constitutionalist and moderate Tory backbencher. Speaking on the floor of the House, she stated, "We owe our constitutional monarchy not only our respect, but our vigilance. If there is even the appearance of fabricated records tied to the royal line of succession, it is our duty, not our preference, to investigate." Under Condane, Intri Tispixun, the Home Office, normally silent on royal matters, issued a brief holding statement that it would defer to Buckingham Palace and await clarity on legal documentation. But behind closed doors, senior civil service lawyers are said to be reviewing how the Births and Deaths Registration Act might apply to foreign-born royal children, especially in light of DL's pending disclosure. There is no modern precedent for this, but there is a quiet fear of what such a precedent might trigger. What has added weight to the current crisis is the recent unsealing of a clause from Queen Elizabeth II's private will, uncovered in late October by Princess Anne during her annual visit to Balmoral. The clause, handwritten and dated March 2022, just 6 months before Her Majesty's passing, includes a note about ensuring clarity and legality for all descendants in the line of succession, especially those born outside sovereign soil. This is the standard in the stepting, when everyone self. At the time, this line was interpreted as a general precaution in a post-Brexit, globalized world. But in light of DL's allegations, the clause has taken on a haunting relevance. "The Queen was no fool," said a former private secretary to Her Majesty. She had witnessed how Harry and Meghan's path diverged from tradition. That clause was her way of leaving behind a warning, or perhaps a challenge. End quote. Princess Anne, fiercely protective of the monarchy's structural integrity, has reportedly instructed the Lord Chamberlain's office to initiate a review of the clause's legal binding status under existing royal succession protocols. If activated, it may provide the monarchy with a fallback mechanism to reassess or revoke titles granted under disputed circumstances. Out on the streets and across social platforms, the nation appears split. Polls conducted by YouGov between December 12 and 13 show a sharp divide. 54% of respondents believe the royal family should investigate and clarify the truth surrounding Archie and Lilibet's birth circumstances. 38% say the issue is a private family matter and should not affect titles. The remaining 8% are undecided or feel the monarchy itself should be reformed altogether. What's surprising is that even among younger demographics, support for transparency in royal bloodlines is stronger than anticipated. One viral comment on TikTok viewed over 2 million times summarized the mood. If they hid something this big from us, what else is a performance? Meanwhile, support for Catherine has only grown. Images of her recent visit to St. Mary's Children's Ward, holding the hand of a terminally ill girl while singing Christmas carols, have dominated Instagram and front pages alike. Without saying a word on the scandal, she has, as one headline put it, reminded the nation what authentic royalty looks like. According to a source within Meghan's former PR circle, she has been advised to remain completely silent until after DL's rumoured televised sit-down airs. Any preemptive denial, they warn, could be used against her legally if documentation proves credible. She has reportedly ceased all contact with multiple U.S. outlets that previously supported her narrative and is now operating through one attorney and a personal crisis manager. No scheduled public appearances remain for December. Even the annual Archewell Foundation holiday statement has been postponed. The silence, however, may be doing more harm than good. Within Montecito, it said Meghan and Harry are experiencing deep tension, with Harry blaming her team for letting this get out of control, and Meghan accusing Harry of cracking under pressure. Both, it seems, have realized the game they were playing with public image and institutional resistance has now escalated beyond strategy into the realm of evidence and legality. And the Crown, for once, is not waiting. In a private meeting room deep within St. James's Palace, beneath portraits of long-dead sovereigns and oil lamp chandeliers, a small group of advisors, constitutional lawyers, and military liaisons gathered at the request of Princess Anne. The tone was brisk, the agenda was blunt. The question on the table was no longer if DL would go public with evidence linking her to Archie and Lilibet, but when she did, how the Crown would legally and symbolically respond. Anne, as the Crown's enforcer, has long stood apart from the emotional dynamics of the Sussex drama. Where others wavered, she hardened. And now, with Sophie having drawn the public line, it is Anne who has been charged with fortifying the institutional barricades behind it. This is no longer about scandal, it's about sovereignty, she told aides, according to a source familiar with the session. If the bloodline is not guarded, then the House of Windsor is merely theatre. In Tenbury, by December 13, palace legal teams had begun assembling what insiders are calling the Bloodline Sovereignty Addendum, an internal doctrine that outlines the qualifications, documentation, and disclosures necessary for future heirs born outside direct sovereign oversight. Though unofficial for now, the doctrine is already being circulated among key royals. The document would require independent medical verification for all royal births tied to the line of succession, public acknowledgement if assisted reproductive methods are used, a clear policy on the disqualification of heirs born under false or obscured maternal claims. Some interpret this as a veiled strike against Meghan, but in truth, it's a safeguard against future breaches, a preventative firewall written in the language of law, not vendetta. Quietly, changes are already being made in the ranks. Archie and Lilibet's honorary military associations, awarded ceremonially in 2021 during the Platinum Jubilee, are now under internal review by the Royal College of Arms, citing uncertainty surrounding eligibility. While symbolic, these honours confer the impression of continuity. And continuity, under question, weakens the entire monarchical facade. Princess Anne, herself the head of several royal military patronages, has taken the lead on reassigning ceremonial duties for the 2026, trooping the colour, removing Archie's symbolic banner altogether, replacing it with that of Lady Louise Windsor. It's a silent gesture, but a deeply telling one. From Montecito, Harry has reportedly requested a private arbitration session with King Charles before Christmas, offering to sign a long-term no media clause in exchange for the retention of his children's royal status. It's a move Anne reportedly opposed immediately, calling it a bribe dressed in regret. End quote. Sources close to the matter say Anne's influence and Sophie's public clarity have shifted the palace toward total institutional separation from the Sussexes if DL's documents are confirmed. He cannot break the structure and then demand protection from the fallout, one senior official said. This isn't personal, it's architectural. Buckingham Palace has increased security at its royal archives. The Privy Council Office is preparing briefing notes on the precedent of royal title revocation due to fraudulent eligibility, and several constitutional scholars are being invited to Sandringham for a private holiday session not to discuss festivities, but to prepare for a possible removal of royal status from two minors born into an illusion. What was once emotional noise has become procedural machinery. And Princess Anne now leads that machinery with the cold efficiency of a woman who knows exactly what is at stake. Not public opinion, not familial repair, but the structural survival of the monarchy itself. If loyalty was once the invisible currency of the crown, then December 2025 marked the moment it collapsed in full public view. Following the December 6th allergic reaction that nearly killed Princess Catherine during a royal dinner and the arrest of Camilla's trusted bodyguard Ali Plunkett, something shifted not just in security protocols, but in power. Because Prince William didn't wait for permission. On December 8th, just 48 hours after Catherine's recovery, royal observers noticed a change. A black, unmarked SUV began tailing the princess's car convoys. Her walkabouts were now surrounded by figures with earpieces, moving in subtle flanks. And most telling of all, Thomas Ainsworth was back. The former Royal Air Service officer, Catherine's senior personal protector since 2016, had been quietly reassigned in November to support King Charles and Queen Camilla's Singapore visit. But now, he had returned, fully armed, unbadged, working not for the King's office, but under direct orders from Prince William. Sources from Kensington Palace confirmed Catherine's close protection unit had been rebuilt from scratch, with ex-military and counter-infiltration specialists. All her vehicle movements are now mirrored by decoys. Digital surveillance surrounding her itinerary has been disconnected from the broader royal household system. This isn't precaution, one senior aide admitted. This is a lockdown. Catherine is now treated as a potential target from within. We Gredmos of the siege. The turning point came during a closed-door strategy session at Windsor Castle on December 9th. Present were King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Anne. What should have been a security debrief became a confrontation. You shifted her protection to cover your Singapore tour, William said, his voice cold. You left her exposed. And now she's recovering from a poisoning, and you want to carry on as if it's just miscommunication. Charles reportedly attempted to explain that the threat had been unseen, that protocols had been followed, that there was no clear evidence of malicious intent. But Anne, normally diplomatic, cut in sharply. You're right, Charles. There's no clear evidence because we buried it. Witnesses described the room as frozen. William walked out first. Anne followed. Charles sat alone for 15 minutes before requesting his aide bring him brandy at 10:35 a.m. On the surface, the palace moved forward with its seasonal programming, holiday wreaths, toy drives, charity concerts. But behind the curtains, the architecture of power was being redrawn. The Wales household is now operating on a standalone security channel, refusing shared planning tools with Clarence House, relying on independent medical staff for Catherine and the children. It is the most profound internal shift since Queen Elizabeth's passing, not through decree, but through quiet assertion. And it's working. On December 10th, Catherine made a public appearance at a paediatric hospice. She looked thinner, her cheeks slightly hollow, but she smiled. She knelt by a boy with leukemia, held a girl's sketchbook, and told one nurse, "I'm just grateful we're here today." The photo, a mother of 3, having nearly died days earlier, choosing to show up with grace, went viral. By December 11th, the hashtag number Protect Catherine had overtaken political news on X. TikTok exploded with breakdowns of the timeline, security shifts, and side-by-side footage showing Catherine's appearances before and after the allergic reaction. One viral comment summed up the mood. They tried to silence her. She answered by standing taller. Public polls showed 72% of Britons believe the palace is hiding something. 65% support William's decision to rebuild Catherine's guard. Only 18% believe Camilla should remain active in royal duties. And then came a headline from the Daily Mirror. The princess has her own army now. As these shifts unfolded, one figure disappeared entirely: Camilla. Since December 7th, the Queen Consort has not been seen publicly, her calendar has been cleared due to rest, and her office refuses all comment. But palace insiders suggest something more deliberate. Her senior secretary resigned on December 10th. All communications between her and the Wales team have reportedly been suspended. Even Charles is said to communicate with her via intermediaries. "She's not just under scrutiny," one courtier noted, "she's radioactive." One have to disatrees. A quiet tension gripped the Montecito estate of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. No motorcade arrived, no publicist entered. The gates remained sealed. Inside, according to a source close to their legal team, Meghan Markle had stopped speaking. "She's gone silent," the source said, "not just publicly, internally." Where once there had been media coordination, calendar management, and narrative steering, there was now only triage. The Archewell Foundation had paused all year-end press engagements. A planned partnership announcement with a wellness brand was abruptly cancelled. Netflix executives, once effusive about a second docuseries, have gone dark. The Duchess, so often a commanding presence in every room she entered, now spends hours alone in the library. She knows what's coming. Across the Atlantic, DL, the woman at the center of the surrogacy storm, is preparing to go public. A televised interview is scheduled, and her legal team has confirmed that documents will be made available to the press simultaneously. Hospital records, clinic logs, financial transfers, and most damningly, a signed non-disclosure agreement co-signed by a senior aide in Harry's office in late 2018. The Sussexes, for all their experience in managing scandal, are facing something categorically different. Not opinion, not rumour, but evidence. And this time, no amount of charm, victimhood, or media deflection will obscure it. Sources confirm that Harry and Meghan are no longer presenting a united front behind closed doors. The unravelling began in early December, shortly after the Windsor statement issued by Duchess Sophie. According to insiders, Harry was enraged that the royal family had allowed Sophie, not Charles or William, to be the face of discipline. He reportedly interpreted the move as a strategic distancing from him personally and a deliberate slight toward Meghan. But Meghan saw it differently. For her, Sophie's statement was a signal that the royal family had finally stopped playing politics. She understood the weight of the moment and the peril it posed to her image. She turned inward, the source explained. She blamed Harry. She told him he never should have trusted DL, that he should have paid her more, that this was his failure to contain the secret. In response, Harry lashed out not at Meghan, but at the palace. On December 9, he allegedly attempted to reach Prince William through an informal intermediary, hoping for what he termed a brother's clarity. William declined the conversation. For Harry, that closed the final door. Meanwhile, in a private townhouse outside London, DL's team is rehearsing history. The woman whose identity has remained sealed for nearly 6 years is now fully protected by legal counsel, private security, and international media contracts. Her interview will air live, unedited, unfiltered, and will include the simultaneous digital release of over 70 pages of evidence detailing the arrangement she claims took place between herself, a California-based fertility clinic, and the Sussex team between 2018 and 2020. Among the most significant items reportedly in her possession, ultrasound scans dated 4 months before Archie's official birth announcement, a direct email from a palace-linked intermediary discussing identity firewall, travel logs confirming DL's presence in Colorado during Meghan's alleged due date, photos from inside the clinic, including one where Harry's initials appear on a patient intake form under the intended father section. But perhaps the most damaging is a 2-page memo drafted by a UK legal team hired by Meghan in early 2019, outlining the potential fallout if birth secrecy were ever exposed. The memo includes a line that has already gone viral in legal circles: "Perception is reality until documentation proves otherwise." It's the phrase now being whispered in every corner of Westminster and Windsor. This is no longer just a British story. American media has caught on. CNN, The New York Times, and even The View have picked up the scandal, framing it as a transatlantic breakdown of royal credibility. Questions are being raised about Lilibet's U.S. birth registration, which lists Meghan as the mother. If proven false, legal experts say it could trigger investigations into documentation fraud, especially since her birth was used in visa renewals, charitable registration, and business filings. Meanwhile, in Canada, where Harry and Meghan briefly lived in 2020, politicians are urging that any tax benefits or security protections offered during their stay be reviewed, in case they were based on false representations of royal status. Buckingham Palace has declined all comment, but quietly, lawyers are drafting contingencies for full royal title revocation. At the heart of the collapse is a psychological portrait of two people on opposite tracks. Harry, insiders say, has become haunted. He sleeps irregularly, walks the gardens at night, and has been spotted alone in public without security for the first time in over a year. His friends, those still willing to speak with the press, describe a man undone by the weight of silence. He never wanted this. He wanted protection, privacy, and a clean break. What he got was chaos, alienation, and now, possibly, the legal erasure of his children from the royal line he once escaped. Meghan, by contrast, remains defensive but calculating. Her silence is not grief. It is a strategy, a waiting game perhaps, or a refusal to legitimize the scandal until it goes fully public. She still believes she can come back from this, said a source. She's not thinking about the monarchy. She's thinking about Netflix, about future deals, about how to reframe this once the worst passes. But even Hollywood is pausing. A planned biopic-style limited series about her motherhood journey has been quietly dropped. Several investors in her lifestyle brand American Riviera Orchard have backed out, citing reputational volatility. The very machine that once uplifted her is turning away not because of scandal, but because of uncertainty. As DL rehearses her answers, as producers wire her up, as cameras are positioned and anchors prepare, one truth becomes unavoidable. This is the moment the illusion ends. And for the Sussexes who crafted their post-royal identity on the idea that authenticity trumps tradition, the consequences will be poetic. Because now, tradition is fighting back. With protocol, with law, and with evidence. In just 3 days, DL will speak. And when she does, the story will no longer belong to Harry or Meghan. It will belong to history. Westminster glowed beneath an overcast sky as MPs entered the House for what was formally described as a special closed session on constitutional continuity. Behind those dignified doors, conversations rarely uttered aloud began to unfold, not about diplomacy or foreign policy, but about lineage, legal recognition, and the limits of royal trust. For the first time in over a decade, Parliament is seriously considering reviewing the royal succession documentation process, especially for heirs born abroad or under non-traditional circumstances. The triggering concern: DL's expected revelation of forged maternal records and private arrangements that potentially bypassed British registration laws. This is not rebellion, it is restraint. The government remains loyal to the monarchy but must now weigh loyalty against legality. At the same hour, King Charles III left London for Sandringham, declining all scheduled meetings. The palace's official line is seasonal rest, but insiders know the truth. Charles is preparing emotionally and constitutionally for a crisis no monarch has faced since the abdication of Edward VIII. Reports suggest he will spend the coming days in seclusion, surrounded only by close legal counsel, Princess Anne, and one private secretary from his late mother's staff, a trusted bridge to Elizabeth II's era of discipline. In contrast, Duchess Sophie has remained in Windsor, quietly preparing a Christmas address expected to be delivered on behalf of the Queen Consort's office, a historic moment, as this would be the first time a non-monarch, non-consort woman addresses the nation on Christmas Eve. Her speech, according to sources, will focus on truth, stability, and enduring responsibility. But behind the elegant language lies the clearest message yet. The crown will not bend for convenience, not for scandal, not for sentiment, not even for family. At 8 p.m. London time, the world watched as DL finally stepped into the light. Seated across from a respected BBC anchor in a room stripped of royal glamour or sensationalism, she told her story measured, emotional, but surgically precise. Her words were backed by documents, scans, signatures, confidential clinic logs, and a signed directive confirming that Meghan Markle was never the woman who gave birth to Archie or Lilibet. "I was told my name would never be known. I was told they'd protect me. But once the babies were born, I was erased." The broadcast ran for 42 minutes. By the third minute, number Royal Birth Truth was trending in 13 countries. Within hours, CNN ran a breaking special titled "Succession Under Fire." France's Le Monde called it a constitutional fracture. The New York Times released an editorial, "The Price of Royal Illusion." In the UK, Parliament confirmed it would open an independent inquiry into royal birth registrations linked to titles of succession. Members from both parties are demanding clarification on whether laws were violated not just by the Sussexes, but by royal aides complicit in the cover-up. The palace issued a 4-line statement. "We have taken note of the public claims made this evening. We remain committed to upholding the dignity and continuity of the Crown. No further comment at this time." But inside Windsor, sources report a storm of preparation. Legal teams are drawing up what may become the most consequential royal decree of King Charles's reign, a formal revocation of all succession rights and titles for Archie and Lilibet, pending the outcome of the inquiry. As the credits rolled on the interview, DL said one final line: "This isn't revenge, this is identity," and they knew it from the start. The monarchy, once protected by myth and silence, now stands exposed, its future not destroyed, but rewritten, not with rage,